Chapter 830. Shadow Clan, Movie Emperor Tion. The Shadow Clan was an average clan in the Sky Clouds continent. Their overall strength wasn't strong. However, the strongest members of the Shadow Clan were all at the top of the continent. The three Shadow Mouse brothers that Tion Yang had killed were among them. Although they were not pure members of the Shadow Clan, they were still part of the Shadow Clan. However, they were also a part of the Shadow Tribe. Previously, when Tion Yang had first entered the Dragon Emperor Pagoda, he had killed an unruly youth from the Shadow Tribe. When one's strength reached the standard, they could naturally enter. But no matter how strong the three Shadow Mouse brothers and the young man from the Shadow Clan were, they could not compare to the person in front of them. The number one genius of the Shadow Clan, Movie Emperor Tion. He started cultivating at the age of 15, reached the Tao Fire Realm at the age of 30, stepped into the Spirit Sea Realm at the age of 120, and stepped into the Heaven Ascension Realm at the age of 350. Now, he was only 1,008 years old, but he had already reached the peak of the fourth stage of the Heaven Ascension Realm. His physical strength and true essence cultivation were both unfathomable. In the Shadow Clan, whose cultivation speed was slow, he was definitely a peerless genius. I just need to jump up and leave a mark. At this moment, Movie Emperor Tion turned around and looked at the East Sea Dragon Palace's Grand Elder. The Grand Elder nodded slightly. Then, Movie Emperor Tion turned around again. The skinny figure hidden under the black robe instantly erupted with an incomparably terrifying power. In the next moment, Movie Emperor Tion's figure shot into the sky like a cannonball. In the blink of an eye, he had jumped to an extremely high height. A sharp light flashed in his hand. A high-grade spirit artifact sword that flickered with a sharp light appeared. In the next moment, Movie Emperor Tion roared. Low-grade heaven tier martial technique, 10,000 shadow swords. Movie Emperor Tion slashed out with his sword. The world seemed to darken. The sword in Movie Emperor Tion's hand transformed into countless long swords with shadows that surrounded Movie Emperor Tion. In the sky, the seemingly endless dragon gate heavenly steel also bloomed with rays of light. Boom, 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 boom. The sound of swords colliding rang out. Movie Emperor Tion's 10,000 shadow swords also fiercely bombarded the dragon gate heavenly steel. Previously, the Tyrant King, because he purely used his physical strength to execute martial techniques, he was naturally weaker than true essence. If these people were like the Tyrant King and only had physical strength, that would be fine. However, for a special life form like Movie Emperor Tion, the power he grasped was not restricted by the forbidden space. When he used martial techniques, the power he could unleash was far stronger than the Tyrant King's. Final strike, Divine Shadow Sword. At this moment, an arrogant shout came from the sky. Behind Movie Emperor Tion, streaks of shadow power condensed, forming a giant god from the Shadow Clan. Giant god of the Shadow Tribe wielded his long sword, his movements synchronized with Movie Emperor Tion's. He ruthlessly slashed at the Dragon Gate's divine steel. Boom! A deafening explosion resounded throughout the entire area. Under everyone's gaze, the heavenly steel of the Dragon Gate had also been left with a mark about half the depth of a fingernail. As for the height, it was a full 3,000 feet. Bang! Ha ha! I am indeed the strongest. Movie Emperor Tion slowly landed on the ground with a proud look on his face. This was the center of the forbidden space. The power of the forbidden space even affected one's physical body. However, he was still able to leap 300 meters in a single leap and unleash such a powerful sword technique. Best actor Tion was about to blow his top. However, a stone steel suddenly appeared beside the Dragon Gate's divine steel. The stone steel shone with dragon chi, and there were giant dragons coiling around it. In the center of the stone steel, a line of names appeared. Movie Emperor Tion, height 3,000 feet, depth half an inch. Failed. Seeing this, Movie Emperor Tion's arrogant smile froze. Failed? What did that mean? At this moment, the Grand Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace spoke again. According to the ancient records, the Dragon Gate's divine steel is 1,000 feet tall and 100 feet deep. Although I'm not sure how to pass. However, it's not even a third of the height. Haha. The Grand Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace chuckled. Hearing this, movie Emperor Tion's face instantly stiffened. Haha. The two words were full of mockery. At this moment, Tianyong also smiled slightly. This Grand Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace was not kind. Previously, the Tyrant King had gone to test it before telling him the rules of the Dragon Gate's divine steel. Now, Best Actor Tion was about to raise his heels to the sky when he said those words. However, after hearing this, a trace of worry appeared on everyone's faces. Movie Emperor Tion's strength was not weak. If even he failed, it would be difficult for most of the people here to pass. I'll do it. At this moment, a dull voice sounded. Tianyong turned his head and immediately raised his eyebrows. This person turned out to be the bronze man who had been tricked by the Vajrabodhi when Tianyong and the Vajrabodhi were fighting for the Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree. The bronze man seemed to have noticed Tianyong and cast a grateful look at Tianyong before walking towards the Dragon Gate's divine steel. A metallic life form, another special life form elite. The charm of the Dragon Emperor's mausoleum is indeed great. Tianyong sighed. At this moment, the bronze man bent his knees slightly and also jumped up. In an instant, he crossed 1,000 feet. What? Seeing this, movie Emperor Tion's expression changed slightly. Previously, he had not even crossed 500 feet in an instant. This metallic life form, whose name he didn't know, had actually surpassed him right from the start. The others also revealed a trace of surprise. At this moment, the bronze man had also reached the highest point. 500 feet. The bronze man did not have any special strength. He only had an arm that was truly made of tough metal. And that terrifying strength, a fist that looked as heavy as 1,000 pounds, suddenly blasted out. This Dragon Gate's divine steel is so tough that even I can only leave a half-inch mark on it. This guy will definitely fail. Movie Emperor Tion shouted in his heart. At this moment, the bronze man's fist had already collided with the Dragon Gate's divine steel. Boom! A dull sound different from movie Emperor Tion's rang out. After the bronze man threw out a punch, he rapidly fell to the ground and smashed a large hole in the ground. At this moment, a line of words appeared on the stone steel beside the Dragon Gate's divine steel. Bronze, height 510 feet, depth 3 inches pass. Seeing this, the bronze man revealed a trace of joy. Movie Emperor Tion's expression was extremely gloomy. Subsequently, one after another, everyone participated in the Dragon Gate's divine steel. Among them, Gui Li of the Ghost Clan, Granny Ling Shan of the Nine Heavens Palace, the Supreme Elder and Long Taiji of the EC Dragon Palace, Yingling of the Shadow Clan, and others had all successfully passed the test. After all, they were the strongest of their respective forces. It would be strange if they did not pass. Then, only Tianyong and the bronze man were left. Hurry up, only you guys are left. Movie Emperor Tian, who had only succeeded once after several attempts, urged impatiently. As for Gui Li and the others, their faces were sinister. Tianyong? Chapter 831. The Dragon Gate divine steel was 10,000 feet tall. However, among this group of almighties, those who could reach 600 feet were the strongest of the strongest, let alone 10,000 feet. Even the Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace, who was the most familiar with the Dragon Gate divine steel and had the greatest racial advantage, could only reach 7,000 feet, while Best Actor Tion was continuously testing. The bottom line of the Dragon Gate divine steel was also tested. It couldn't be lower than 4,500 feet. It couldn't be shallower than 1.5 inches. The depth here didn't mean the total depth of the steel, but the highest value among the countless wounds caused by the attack. The reason why Best Actor Tion was only half an inch was because his attacks were too scattered. Although they were powerful, they weren't weak in actual combat. However, he was still far from being able to face such a test. In order to pass the test, one's attack power had to be concentrated on one point. As for the Overlord King from before, that guy was so stubborn that he directly attacked the the hardest and most impenetrable base. He didn't even have the strength to continue. It was already impressive that he could leave a mark. Kid, give up. So what if your sword technique is superb and your secret technique is powerful? There's no true essence for you to use now. Instead of wasting time here, you might as well slip away obediently. Best Actor Tian stood not far away and mocked Tianyang. Those who couldn't pass had already left. Now, Best Actor Tian was at the bottom. The only person he could mock was Tianyang. However, Tianyang couldn't be bothered with him. A sword light flashed in his hand, and the Great Void Sword Embryo, which had been upgraded to the peak of superior grade spirit artifact, appeared in his hand. Fool who doesn't know his own limits. Seeing this, Supreme Scarlet Flame sneered. Perhaps Tianyang's soul power, spiritual fire power, sword technique, and secret technique were powerful. However, this was the forbidden space. The latter two were doomed. The Dragon Gate, Divine Steel, didn't test the former two. Tianyang's 4 areas of expertise were all eliminated. He didn't have any advantages at all. Instead, his disadvantages were magnified to the extreme. How could he pass this extremely demanding Dragon Gate, Divine Steel, and compete with them for the Dragon Emperor's inheritance? Do I need you to tell me whether Master can do it or not? Tianyang ignored him, but Ling Yuhan spoke up unhappily. Because of the forbidden technique, Ling Yuhan was only a peak 9th level C of Soul Realm cannon fodder in the outside world. But here, she was an almighty being who could use her bloodline power. Although Ling Yuhan had used up a lot of her bloodline power to deal with Foaming Z, some of the people here were weaker than Foaming Z. Facing these people, Ling Yuhan was not afraid at all. Hearing this, Supreme Chi Yin was instantly enraged. It was fine that Tianyang didn't put her in his eyes, but this guy who came out of nowhere dared to treat her like this? Film Emperor Tian's face darkened. However, Tianyang had already reached the Dragon Gate Sky Tablet. Movie Emperor Tian and Supreme Crimson Flame also shut their mouths, and Ghostly also revealed a trace of mockery. He didn't say anything because he didn't want to argue. However, this did not mean that he had high hopes for Tianyang. Overestimating yourself and asking for humiliation. Ghostly sneered. However, Long Taiji spoke at this time. Since you look down on Tianyang so much, then how about we make a bet? Hearing this, Supreme Crimson Flame and Movie Emperor Tian's expressions changed, and they looked at Long Taiji. They were clear about Long Taiji's identity. He was the current crown prince of the East Sea Dragon Palace, the future Dragon King. Such an existence wanted to bet with them? Bet on what? However, although his heart was moved, Movie Emperor Tian did not show it. Instead, he asked, let's bet on whether Tianyang is stronger than you. If I win, you have to kowtow to Tianyang and apologize, and take out your clan's extreme shadow arm guard. If I lose, I'll give you the Dragon Ball. Long Taiji chuckled. Hearing this, Movie Emperor Tian's face darkened. He was the strongest of the Shadow Clan. Let him bet with Tianyang, or make him kneel and apologize. However, at this time, Supreme Crimson Flame whispered in Movie Emperor Tian's ear. Movie Emperor Tian's expression immediately turned sunny. He looked at Long Taiji with a mocking gaze. Since the Dragon Prince insists on giving me the Dragon Ball, then I can't refuse. I'll bet with you. Movie Emperor Tian laughed wildly. Hearing this, Long Taiji also smiled slightly. He had extremely strong confidence in Tianyang. At this time, Tianyang gathered his strength and jumped up. Like a rocket, he disappeared in the blink of an eye. He still overestimated himself. Just wait. Even if he's lucky enough to reach 4,500 feet, it's impossible to reach 2 inches. Movie Emperor Tian sneered. For some reason, he felt disgusted when he saw Tianyang. This was just a rough feeling. If Movie Emperor Tian knew that their Shadow Clan's inherited holy treasure, a part of the extreme Shadow Sacred Armor, had fallen into Tianyang's hands, he would probably have a heart to kill Tianyang. Beside him, Supreme Crimson Flame and Ghostly sneered. His cultivation base was not enough. In this situation, he still had to kneel. They were waiting to see Tianyang make a fool of himself. TSK. In an instant, I can't see anyone within 100 feet. Half step reaching heaven realm is indeed just a half step reaching heaven realm. Movie Emperor Tion's gaze had been staring at the 100 feet area. After discovering that there was no one there, he couldn't help but mock. He almost passed the test at the last line. A kind of loser mentality made him constantly look down on the next challenger. However, after he said this sentence, what greeted him was not ridicule from the same standpoint as him, but strange gazes. Your eyesight is fine. Long Taiji couldn't help but ask. Hearing this, Movie Emperor Tion was slightly startled. Then he sneered, I've been looking at the 100 feet area. There's been no one there. Tianyang, the starting point, is 100 feet below. Under 100 feet, it's almost impossible to pass the Dragon Gate Divine Steel. Are you still deceiving yourselves? Movie Emperor Tion mocked. Hearing this, Long Taiji's mouth twitched slightly. However, he didn't say much to Movie Emperor Tion. Instead, he looked at the Dragon Gate Divine Steel. Movie Emperor Tion was also a little confused. The starting point was 100 feet below. Logically speaking, the attack should have started by now and even landed. However, why hadn't he heard any sound yet? With doubts in his heart, Movie Emperor Tion turned his head again to look. However, what he saw left Best Actor Tion tongue-tied. 500 feet, 600 feet, 650 feet, 700 feet. Tianyang's body was like a rocket, soaring into the sky. It seemed that the higher and higher the pressure exerted on Tianyang's body, the stronger and stronger was nothing at all. As the height increased, Tianyang's speed became faster and faster. In an instant, 750 feet. It surpassed the previous record of the East Sea Dragon Palace's Supreme Elder. How is this possible? Movie Emperor Tion was dumbfounded as he squeezed out these words from between his teeth in disbelief. Beside him, Supreme Crimson Flame and Ghost Li's faces had already darkened as they stared at Tianyang. Impossible. This guy was definitely just good at jumping. Didn't they say that this guy's soul force was powerful? It's possible that he relied on his soul force to fly up. Supreme Crimson Flame roared in disbelief. He didn't believe, nor was he willing to believe, that Tianyang could actually reach such a terrifying height. Even he, Supreme Crimson Flame, was only 631 feet. Yes. Movie Emperor Tion seemed to have grabbed onto a life-saving straw and hurriedly said, It's all because of his soul force. Once he stops and starts attacking, this guy's true colors will be revealed. Movie Emperor Tion roared. And at this moment, Tianyang also instantly broke through the terrifying pressure from the Dragon Gate's heavenly steel and reached the highest level. Even if the Dragon Gate's heavenly steel was placed in the outside world without a forbidden space, it would be difficult for it to reach the terrifying height that the ancient dragon race could reach. One leap, 10,000 feet. Countless people sucked in a breath of cold air, their hearts shocked. Seeing this, Movie Emperor Tion, Supreme Crimson Flame, and Ghostly felt as if their hearts were pinched and they found it difficult to breathe. In their hearts, there was only one thought. Tianyang's attack must not be enough. It must be less than 2 inches. At this moment, Tianyang's eyes flashed, and he attacked. Divine Dragon King Sword. Chapter 832. Sky Extreme Sword Art. Fourth Sword Firmament. Tianyang roared. Rolling dragon power and terrifying soul power condensed on the Great Void Sword Embryo. The Great Void Sword Embryo shone brightly. In an instant, the sword slashed out. Boom! A bright sword light seemed to tear apart the eternal night. The light covered the sun, moon, and stars, and even space trembled. Soul power and the Divine Dragon's dragon power fused into one. Even without true Yuan, it could still erupt with terrifying power. Firmament sword, stepping on all life, dominating the sky. What? Prime Chi Yin exclaimed in disbelief. In the next moment, the firmament sword slashed fiercely on the Dragon Gate steel. Impossible. He's definitely faking it. How can he be so strong? Movie Emperor Tion roared, his face full of shock and disbelief. Too strong. Tianyang's sword had far exceeded their imagination. They originally thought that with Tianyang's strength, jumping to the top of the Dragon Gate steel was already his limit. Slashing out a 2-inch deep mark, that was even more impossible. Even the East Sea Dragon Palace's Supreme Elder could not do this. However, looking at the power of this sword, no matter how they looked at it, it was more than enough. He must be faking it. People with powerful soul power can usually simulate illusions. Tianyang must have failed. Prime Chi-Yin roared. Ghost Li's face also darkened. He and Tianyang had already formed a deadly feud. They would not rest until one of them was dead. The stronger Tianyang was, the more disadvantageous it was for him. Now, although he did not say a word, he was unwilling to believe it. Tianyang could slash out such a terrifying sword. Ha ha! All of you are dumbfounded. Boss Tianyang is the benefactor of our East Sea Dragon Palace. Such an existence can't pass the Dragon Gate steel. Fortunately, Boss Tianyang disdained to make a bet with you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to keep your heads. A voice that did not care about the faces of the three powerhouses sounded. Hearing this, the three powerhouses' faces darkened. Indeed, Tianyang did not make a bet with them. However, they had made a bet with Long Taiji. Damn it, Tianyang must not succeed. Movie Emperor Tian roared furiously in his heart as he stared at Tianyang, who had slashed out with his sword in the sky and was hidden in the world. His face was full of resentment. Once he lost, he would have to kowtow to apologize to Tianyang in front of everyone. At the same time, he also had a hand over one of the inherited sacred treasures of the Shadow Clan, the Extreme Shadow Arm Guard. No power disappear. No power disappear. Absolutely fail disappear. Movie Emperor Tian roared in his heart. Now, in terms of height, Tianyang had already beaten everyone. Now, the only thing that could make him fail was the depth of his cultivation. But Tianyang obviously didn't make the same mistake as he did. He only used one attack, and he had concentrated all his power into that one attack. He had completely condensed all the power of this sword into a single line. Even Movie Emperor Tian had an ominous feeling in the depths of his heart. Boom! At this moment, for some reason, another explosion sounded. The ground beneath everyone's feet suddenly trembled. While everyone was still unaware of what had happened, the ground beneath them suddenly trembled. The Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace looked at the Dragon Gate steel in disbelief. Seeing this, everyone turned their heads to look. However, after seeing this scene, everyone became like the Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace. They were dumbfounded. Break! Tianyang shouted in a low voice, releasing the strongest power in the sky. Crack, crack, crack. A crisp sound echoed from the Dragon Gate sky steel as a crack suddenly appeared on the formless Dragon Gate sky steel. Then, as time passed, it expanded rapidly. In the blink of an eye, that crack had already spread like a spider web across the entire Dragon Gate steel. Movie Emperor Tian's breathing almost stopped. His pupils were dilated to the extreme as he stared at the Dragon Gate steel. Although the center of the crack was still covered by the sword light, it was the crack that spread out. It was far more than 2 inches. Boom! And at this moment, a terrifying explosion sounded, and streams of dragon chi surged out violently. However, none of them flew towards those experts. They were all sucked in by the invisible figure in the sword light in the sky, like a whale swallowing them. No one saw it. Dragon patterns appeared on Tianyang's slightly thin muscles, revealing a luxurious and powerful purple-gold color. Tianyang's eyes were tightly shut, and the divine dragon's dragon core in his heart was thumping as if there was some opportunity. The lines of his muscles were gentler, but the explosive power was not reduced. A casual punch could shatter mountains and rivers, and the space was turbulent. The others jumped through the Dragon Gate by climbing the Dragon Gate. They barely passed the passing line by luck. Tianyang, on the other hand, was really jumping through the Dragon Gate. The fish that jumped through the Dragon Gate would become a dragon. The dragon that jumped through the Dragon Gate would soar to the 9 heavens. Between heaven and earth, thunderbolts were suddenly formed, brewing a terrifying and powerful aura. However, Tianyong suddenly opened his eyes. No, it's not enough. Then he snapped his fingers. Snap! The thunderclouds dissipated, and the sword light around Tianyong also slowly dissipated. At this moment, crack, 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 the crisp sounds of explosions grew louder and more concentrated. Just as the wisp of light around Heavenly Sun's body completely dissipated, Heavenly Sun's eyes lit up. Boom! Cracks covered the Dragon Gate's divine tablet. The Dragon Gate's divine tablet exploded. This scene shocked countless experts. Tianyong's expression was calm. He held the great void sword embryo and slowly landed on the ground. His robes fluttered in the wind, making flapping sounds. Others did not see it, but Tianyong sensed it. The moment the Dragon Gate's divine tablet exploded, a pure dragon shadow flowed into his body from the Dragon Gate's divine tablet. At this moment, it was resting in Tianyong's divine dragon's dragon core. Although he did not know what it was definitely extraordinary. Past. Ha ha ha. Tianyong's boss is indeed Tianyong's boss. You jumped through the Dragon Gate and destroyed it. At this moment, Long Taiji suddenly reacted and burst into earth-shattering laughter. Then, everyone reacted one after another, their faces full of disbelief. Past. This young man, who was not even in the reaching heaven state, and could not be compared with him at all, passed. He jumped thousands of feet and slashed the Dragon Gate. However, while everyone was shocked, the faces of movie Emperor Tian and the other two were gloomy. They wanted to leave first. However, at this moment, laughter was heard. Shadow Clan, I say, the bet has not been fulfilled yet. Why do you want to leave? Tianyong held the great void sword embryo and walked over calmly with a smile on his face. Hearing this, movie Emperor Tian's face instantly turned extremely ugly. At this moment, Ghostly snorted coldly and stood out. Kid, don't do things too seriously. It's just a bet. Why do you have to be so serious? Cancel. Ghostly snorted coldly. Hearing this, everyone nodded slightly. Indeed, if they let movie Emperor Tian fulfill the bet here, they would offend the Shadow Clan. Many people thought that Tianyong should retreat. Even Long Taiji thought so. However, when Tianyong heard this, he smiled faintly. There was a trace of coldness in his eyes. Get out of the way. Chapter 833. Get out of the way. Otherwise, you'll have to kneel too. Tianyong had a smile on his face, but his eyes revealed a terrifying chill that seemed to come from hell. Hearing this, Ghostly was shocked at first. Then his face suddenly turned gloomy. This kid, facing him, he actually dared to be so arrogant. Courting death, Ghostly roared angrily, and the ghost chi in his body surged out. In an instant, a terrifying ghost fog formed around him. Ghost chi was a special power of the Ghost Clan. It did not belong to true essence, nor did it rely on true essence. It was not restricted by the forbidden array. I've already given you face, but since you don't want it, don't blame me for forcing you to drink a forfeit. 1,000 ghosts returned to burial region. Ghostly roared. The next moment, the ghost fog suddenly dispersed, and a terrifying domain power erupted. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped the surroundings of the Dragon Gate Divine Steel, except for the true Martial Dragon Palace. The true Martial Dragon Palace had its own special protective power, and Ghostly's strength was far inferior to the true Martial Dragon Emperor. Even with the domain power, it was difficult to invade. However, at this moment, everyone was lost in the 1,000 ghosts returned to burial region. How could they find the direction of the true Martial Dragon Palace? Damn it, why didn't he say anything in advance? Supreme Chi Yan's face was ugly. The three of them were in a temporary alliance. In the end, Ghostly instantly used his strongest move. He didn't even say anything to them. This made Supreme Chi Yan, who had always been headstrong and self-opinionated, have a trace of killing intent in his heart. However, Ghostly is now targeting Tianyong. This 1,000 ghosts returned to burial region can't threaten me. Let's just wait and see. Supreme Chi Yan muttered to himself. And in other places. Damn it, This 1,000 ghosts returned to burial region was actually used by him again. Long Taiji's face changed. Back then, Ghostly used this move in the East Sea Dragon Palace. The terrifying power of that move, even most experts couldn't withstand it. Now, in the Forbidden Array space, the 1,000 ghosts returned to burial region reappeared. Its lethality far exceeded before. Now, we can only pray. Long Taiji sighed. At this moment, Tianyang. Hee. I originally planned to attack you after entering the true Martial Dragon Palace. After all, I can't use the all-ghost return to burial zone with so many people around. However, of all the things you shouldn't have done, you shouldn't have angered me. Ghost Li's strange laughter echoed around Tianyang. Tianyang's eyelids drooped, as if he wasn't listening to what Ghostly was saying. Hearing this, Ghostly was furious. Damn brat, how dare you ignore me? You are courting death. Roar of 1,000 ghosts. Ghostly roared. In the next moment, in the dark, purplish ghost fog, the ghost horrors slowly took shape. Streams of terrifying soul power were released. Soul power and physical strength. In the forbidden space, there were 2 killer moves. Currently, within Gue Li's 10,000 ghosts returned to burial region. Gue Li's spiritual strength will be magnified many times over, while the physical strength of those who were enveloped within the 10,000 ghosts returned to burial region would swiftly shrink. This move again? Seeing this, Tianyang smiled faintly. The great void, sword embryo in his hand released rays of powerful light. Humph! Last time, you're just lucky. This time, I want to see how you're going to break my 10,000 ghosts return to burial region. Hearing this, Ghostly sneered and directly controlled thousands of ghost horrors to attack. At the same time, terrifying screams that were enough to make one's courage burst out, shrouding the entire 10,000 ghosts return to burial region. The powerful spiritual strength contained in it viciously attacked Tianyang. Again, Tianyang shook his head faintly. Holding the great void sword embryo in his hand, he casually swung his sword. A ray of sword light slashed out. The countless ghost horrors that came to attack instantly dissipated. Umph! The ghost horrors in this 10,000 ghost return to burial region are endless. As long as I don't die, the 10,000 ghosts return to burial region will condense into a ghost horrors. Now, you can kill them all with one slash, but what about later? Ghost Li's ruthless mockery sounded. Hearing this, Tianyang's expression didn't change. However, I don't want to keep you alive for too long. Now, I'll give you a quick death. 10,000 ghosts return to burial region. Yellow Springs return to burial region. Ghostly laughed loudly. The next moment, a terrifying aura of death came out from the depths of the 10,000 ghosts returned to burial region. A yellow river slowly flowed out and flowed to Tianyang's body. In the Yellow Springs, there seemed to be countless dead people screaming in pain. And at this time, Ghostly screamed. In the Yellow Springs, a terrifying spiritual shock suddenly rushed out, viciously attacking Tianyang. Yellow Springs. Seeing this, Tianyang's expression didn't change. Ghost Underworld forgetting river, Yellow Springs. It represented death, but even the great destruction of civilization couldn't take my life. This so-called Yellow Springs, what can it do to me? 7 stars secret technique, open 3 stars. Tianyang snorted coldly. The great void sword embryo in his hand flew out. That spiritual shock was instantly slashed into nothingness by the great void sword embryo. At the same time, stars condensed from spiritual shock suddenly appeared around Tianyang's body. www. 7 stars is secret technique, 3 stars. This is the Demon Ancestor Portrait. The Demon Ancestor Portrait's 7 stars secret technique. Ghostly was after all the strongest of the Ghost Clan. When he saw the 3 spiritual shock stars around Tianyang, he instantly associated it with their origins. You actually got the Demon Ancestor Portrait. Damn it. Damn it. Even I don't have it. Ghostly roared. In the next moment, he actually revealed his original body and directly charged towards Tianyang with a greedy gaze. 7 stars secret technique. In ancient times, demon ancestor Wan Xing created the strongest spiritual shock technique in the Sky Continent. If he could get it, Ghost Li's spiritual shock would definitely rise to a level, leading to the growth of his physical body strength. At that time, Ghost Li would be able to leap from a top powerhouse of the continent to one of the strongest of the continent. Idiot! Seeing this, Tianyang revealed a trace of ridicule on his face. He seemed to be mocking this Ghost Li for being stupid to this extent. What did you say? Hearing this, Ghost Li's face instantly turned ugly. However, at this time, Tianyang had already activated 3 spiritual shock stars. He set up the spiritual shock technique. Star strangulation. Tianyang chuckled. The 3 spiritual shock stars erupted with terrifying spiritual shock stars. Many nets, like an inescapable net, enveloped Ghost Li. The next moment, aha! Ghost Li screamed. The purple robe on his body was actually unable to withstand the power of Tianyang's star strangulation and was torn into pieces. Wu Zun's spiritual shock realm used the strongest spiritual shock technique in the Sky Continent. How strong would it be? Ghost Li in front of him was an example. When the demon ancestor was at 3 stars, he was not as strong as this kid. In Tianyang's space bag, the demon ancestor portrait muttered. At this time, Tianyang focused his gaze and looked around. The ghost fog was still there. A ball of true flames of destruction appeared in his hands. Break! Tianyang threw it out casually. In an instant, the 1,000 ghosts returned to burial zone shattered. Ghost Li, who was under the star strangulation, spat out blood and his entire body went limp. As a result, the powerhouses that had just walked out of the 10,000 ghosts returned to burial zone and thought that Heavenly Sun had died all saw this shocking scene unfold before their eyes. Tianyang, stepping on Ghost Li's head, he forced Ghost Li to kneel down. Chapter 834. If you don't kneel, I'll beat you until you kneel. Tianyang's overbearing words were heard, and Ghost Li was under Tianyang's shoes. His face was full of humiliation as he spat out mouthful after mouthful of blood. He hated it. If he knew that Tianyang had mastered the secret skill of 7 stars, he wouldn't have dared to attack Tianyang. Tianyang was too strong. He was so strong that even Ghost Li, who was known as the continent's strongest, couldn't compare to him in terms of the Tao of Soul. Tianyang had only mastered 1 move of the secret skill of 7 stars, star strangulation. However, this move was always successful. No matter who it was, they would have to kneel when facing this move. This Ghost Li was no exception. Say, do you admit defeat? Tianyang smiled and looked at Ghost Li under his feet. Hearing this, Ghost Li's eyes revealed a trace of madness. No. If Tianyang didn't master the secret skill of 7 stars, how could he lose? At this moment, Tianyang activated the secret skill of 7 stars again. This time, it wasn't the star strangulation, but a pure soul attack. Ah! Ghost Li instantly burst out with a sharp and terrifying scream. His pupils instantly shrank to the extreme. He felt that not only was his soul being hammered down by the frightening soul power, but his soul was also being hammered down by the terrifying soul power. At the same time, the released aftershock was like a thin needle, fiercely piercing into his soul origin. For the Ghost Clan, the soul origin was his everything. I admit defeat. I don't admit defeat. Ghost Li just spat out 2 words and felt that the tearing pain eased. He immediately regained his consciousness and roared. However, hearing Ghost Li's last 4 words, Tianyang's mouth suddenly revealed a trace of a smile. He wanted Ghost Li to admit defeat. It would be boring to kill Ghost Li all at once. Like this, torturing and destroying bit by bit was the best way to completely destroy the enemy. Just when Ghost Li just recovered a trace of strength and was about to escape, around Tianyang, 3 soul power stars suddenly appeared and released a terrifying soul power. Star confinement. Tianyang chuckled. The soul force refined by the secret technique of 7 stars instantly turned into a sky full of stars, forming an incomparably sturdy cage. The cage trapped Ghost Li within. At the same time, Tianyang's 7 stars secret technique struck again. Star tear. Tianyang chuckled. Boundless soul energy burst out once again. This time, it didn't deal with any magical equipment on Ghost Lee's body. Like a sharp blade, it directly stabbed into Ghost Lee's soul sea. Ah! Ghost Lee once again let out an ear-piercing scream. This time, due to the secret skill of 7 stars, the power and lethality of the attack far exceeded the soul shock from before. At the same time, the pain Ghost Lee felt also multiplied. Tianyang was not a saint. From the moment he was born until now, not even for a second. Growing up as an orphan, from the day he gained consciousness, he knew what it meant by the sinister nature of human nature and the law of the jungle. Today, if he didn't kill Ghost Lee, sooner or later, Ghost Lee would kill him. The Virgin Mary couldn't survive in this world. Starfall. Tianyang spoke again. The secret skill of 7 stars was incomparably mysterious. Tianyang opened 3 stars at once, so naturally, he could use more secret skills. The power of the stars, which was formed from the power of the soul, could allow the heavenly sun to unleash a true martial, honorable level soul attack. Don't. I'm convinced. I'm convinced. I'm convinced. At this time, Ghost Lee hurriedly screamed. At that moment, his purple robes had already turned into ashes, revealing the face that he was ashamed of, an ugly face that ordinary people would want to kill upon seeing. However, at this moment, Ghost Lee didn't dare to show the slightest bit of anger. Once he was angry, Tianyang would only casually tear him into pieces. Convinced. Hearing this, Tianyang's lips curled into a subtle smile. How am I convinced? Hearing this, Ghost Lee was stunned. At this time, Starfall had already been unleashed. Starfall, as the name suggested, was a star falling from the sky. At this moment, the star falling from the sky was the perfect W star formed by Tianyang's soul force. What a joke. Tianyang now regarded Ghost Lee as the perfect training target. How could he let Ghost Lee be convinced so easily? Convinced? I'll beat you until you're convinced. Ah! Ghost Lee screamed again, but this time his breath was much weaker. Star extinction. Puff! Ghost Lee's body slammed heavily into the cage formed by the star imprisonment, and he spat out mouthfuls of blood. Tianyang didn't have the slightest bit of pity for this. Previously, he had only saved Long Taiji and angered Ghost Lee. If not for his strength, he would have died in Ghost Lee's hands. I'll ask you one last time. Are you convinced? Tianyang said calmly. The 3 stars in his hand revolved, and a terrifying soul force that surpassed the heavens and the earth was directed at Ghost Lee, crushing him. Hearing this, Ghost Lee's body that was beaten beyond recognition instantly trembled, and he howled, I submit. However, in Ghost Lee's eyes, there was still a murderous intent. When I get the opportunity in the Dragon Emperor's inheritance, I will definitely return it to you 1,000 times over. Ghost Lee roared in his heart. At this time, Tianyang spoke again. I acted forcefully, saved Long Taiji, and ruined your plans. Are you convinced? Convinced. In the Dragon Emperor's tomb, I specifically targeted you and took 3 times the upper grade spiritual weapon from you. Are you convinced? Convinced. In the mass grave, I ignored you and despised your dignity. Are you convinced? Convinced. Ghost Lee gritted his teeth in his heart, but on the surface, he still maintained a respectful and trembling look. In the Dragon Emperor Pagoda, I jumped 1,000 feet, cut through the Dragon Gate, and slapped your faces. Are you convinced? Tianyang said indifferently. Ghost Lee hurriedly nodded, showing a humble and respectful look. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled faintly. At this moment, I controlled the 3 stars, imprisoned you, and ruthlessly tortured you. Are you convinced? Tianyang's eyes flashed, and he said indifferently. Hearing this, Ghost Lee's face suddenly turned ashen. The surrounding people were also shocked. Good guy. This time it was really a slap to Ghost Lee's face. I am convinced. Ghost Lee gritted his teeth and finally roared. Hearing this, Tianyang suddenly showed a trace of a smile. It's good that you're convinced. In that case, it's not good for me to continue. Hearing this, Ghost Lee's eyes suddenly shone with a ray of hope. He was going to go out. In the next moment, Tianyang's voice came. Since you're convinced, Then you have no more worries in this mortal world. Go on your way. Tianyong chuckled. Hearing this, Ghost Li's face suddenly changed. Tianyong, you. However, before the last four words could be said, a ray of sword light shattered the space and ruthlessly slashed his broken body. In an instant, boom, Ghost Li's body instantly exploded. Chapter 835. The strongest of the Ghost Clan, Gue Li. His soul was destroyed. At this very moment, all the experts who saw this scene were scared out of their wits. Their hearts were about to explode from the contraction. That's Gue Li. He's one of the strongest people in the Tao of Souls in the entire Heaven continent. He actually died in Tianyong's hands. His soul was destroyed, his body was destroyed, and even that superior grade spirit weapon didn't leave a trace. Such terrifying power. Gue Li is definitely dead. Everyone was shocked. They were all reaching Heaven state overlords of the continent. They should have been calm and collected, and wouldn't be moved even if the sky fell and the earth collapsed. But Gue Li was dead. It was no less shocking than the world collapsing. Granny Ling Shan's pupils shrank. Tianyong had already hidden the secret technique of 7 stars. Even if he summoned 3 stars, he still locked onto the aura of the secret technique of 7 stars. Even Granny Ling Shan, who was a strong person in the Tao of Souls, did not notice it. The 3 stars and the heavenly sun were the most powerful soul secret art of the ancient Heaven continent. The 7 stars secret art, which countless soul force experts yearn for even in their dreams. If others knew about it, even if Tianyong was not afraid of the threat of those strong people, he still did not want to get into trouble. Gue Li is dead. Granny Ling Shan muttered to herself. If Gue Li was the peak of the Tao of Souls in the Heaven continent, then Granny Ling Shan was the peak. However, Granny Ling Shan suddenly had a feeling. It seemed like she should abdicate her position. However, everyone's shock did not affect Tianyong at all. At this moment, Tianyong did not forget the direct reason why he killed Gue Li. What were you doing? Movie Emperor Tian was so scared that he was shaking. He originally thought that with Ghost Li making a move, even if he couldn't eliminate this brat, it should be more than enough to kill him. But, however, Ghost Li had been killed by Heavenly Sun because he had helped him. He even suffered such terrifying humiliation when he was alive. Just as Sovereign Scarlet Flame was about to speak, Tianyong chuckled and glanced at him. Immediately, Supreme Crimson Flame felt as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. His entire body turned ice cold. In the end, he didn't even take a single step before he withdrew his thoughts. Tianyong could even kill Ghost Li. Ghost Li possessed ghostly chi, as well as powerful spiritual energy. Within the Forbidden Zone, his strength was not the slightest bit inferior to Sovereign Crimson Flame. Even so, they had all died, and died in such a miserable manner. Tianyong had not even used his Black Flame, which was not as powerful as the Scarlet Flame Sect's inherited Spirit Fire, the Level 6 Heavenly Fire. He did not even have to use such a powerful trump card, yet he was able to easily kill Ghost Li. Supreme Crimson Flame felt his entire body turn cold. At this moment, who would dare to stand up for Movie Emperor Tian? He did not want to repeat Ghost Li's mistake. So, do you want to do it, or? Tianyong smiled. This Movie Emperor Tian, he had no enmity with him. Although he had killed 4 of his clansmen, this guy obviously did not know about it. If he didn't know, then he would deal with him. Tianyong naturally would not be polite. This guy was arrogant. Then let him pay the price for his arrogance. Movie Emperor Tian took a few steps back, looking at Tianyong, who had returned from killing an emperor, as if he was looking at the god of death. Although the current Sky continent no longer used the titles of Emperor, and so on, because no one was worthy of it. However, Ghost Li's strength, compared to the people of the current Sky continent, was enough to become an emperor. Even so, Ghost Li still died under Tianyong's sword. From the beginning, it was an instant kill. The dignified Ghost Clan's number 1, Ghost Li, had no power to fight back. Although Movie Emperor Tian was one of the strongest in the Shadow Clan, in terms of strength, he was not as good as Ghost Li. On the count of 3, Tianyong said faintly. Hearing this, Movie Emperor Tian's face suddenly changed. 3. Tianyang suddenly said. Hearing this, Movie Emperor Tian's heart suddenly had a million grass mud horses galloping past. He did not care about Tianyang counting to 3, directly kneeling on the ground, his forehead touching the ground. Movie Emperor Tian kowtowed and apologized to Tianyang. I shouldn't have despised you so much. I shouldn't have overestimated myself and made such a humiliating bet. Movie Emperor Tian roared, his forehead banging on the ground 3 times. Then he suddenly stood up. The anger on his face was overflowing. The dignified number 1 genius of the Shadow Clan. When had Movie Emperor Tian suffered such humiliation? However, the person who humiliated him was a terrifying almighty that he could not afford to offend no matter what. At this moment, Movie Emperor Tian felt incomparably sullen in his heart. In the past, only he was domineering and made those who were humiliated by him feel the terrifying gap in strength. Today, the tables had turned. It was his turn to feel the gap between him and Tianyang. In front of Tianyang, he didn't dare to let out a fart. Although you didn't kowtow 3 times, it's still okay to prostrate yourself, Tianyang said faintly. Hearing this, Movie Emperor Tian's face suddenly twitched. The anger in his heart grew even stronger. Still okay. However, the content of the bet is far more than that. Tianyang spoke again. Hearing this, Movie Emperor Tian's expression suddenly changed. There were 2 bets. 1. Movie Emperor Tian, kowtowed to Tianyang and apologized. The second was his Shadow Clan's inherited sacred treasure, a part of the Extreme Shadow sacred armor. The Extreme Shadow Arm Guard. Damn it, this Tianyang actually doesn't know how to be merciful. Movie Emperor Tian roared crazily in his heart. But he never thought. Those who had been humiliated by him in the past had hoped that Movie Emperor Tian would be able to do this. Unfortunately, he didn't pay any attention to them. Today, he returned all of them to him. This, although he was extremely angry in his heart, Movie Emperor Tian didn't dare to reveal a trace of it in front of Tianyang. Instead, he revealed a difficult expression. I'll let my other clan brother carry the Extreme Shadow Arm Guard. It's not on me now. How about, after we leave the Dragon Emperor Pagoda, I'll help you find news of my clan brother. Movie Emperor Tian said. He also had a plan in his heart. Tianyang could be so powerful because of the Dragon Emperor Pagoda's restrictive spell formation. If this restrictive spell formation was gone, everyone's greatest reliance, their true essence cultivation, would also return. At that time, Movie Emperor Tian, would be another genius of the Shadow Clan who dominated the continent. At that time, not to mention the Extreme Shadow Arm Guard, he would also make Tianyang kowtow to him and apologize. Okay, Tianyang glanced at Movie Emperor Tian with a faint smile and then turned around. He wasn't afraid that this guy would go back on his word, because this guy had long since broken his promise. Clan brother? It was probably that young man from the Shadow Clan. At this moment, he had already become a pile of yellow soil in the vast wilderness of the Dragon Emperor Pagoda. As for the Extreme Shadow Arm Guard, it was still in his hands. Chapter 836. Open the true Martial Dragon Palace. Tianyang raised an eyebrow when he heard that. Indeed, he had passed the Dragon Gate. Most of the people had passed as well. However, the door of the true Martial Dragon Palace was still shut. Even if the Dragon Gate Divine Steel was gone, no one would think that it was easy to open the door. The Dragon Gate Divine Steel is only the first step to entering the Dragon Palace. The second step is to test the bloodline. After all, the true Martial Dragon Emperor does not wish for his inheritance to fall into the hands of other races. However, it seems like it's useless now. The Navagraha Dragon Tree's voice was heard. Tianyang nodded slightly when he heard that. The people from the East Sea Dragon Palace were the only ones who possessed the bloodline of the Dragon Clan. They had become the target of public criticism. If the Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace did not open the door or opened it himself, the East Sea Dragon Palace would be finished before the Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace came out. Although the East Sea Dragon Palace was strong, it was not as strong as the combined forces of so many experts. If such a huge force were to erupt, the entire continent would tremble. However, I am not a member of the Dragon Clan. I can't be bothered to explain. Tianyang shook his head. Although he had the ability to open the door, he would not stand out at this time. The Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace sighed and walked to the door of the true Martial Dragon Palace. He had passed the Dragon Gate, Divine Steel, with good results. The aura around the true Martial Dragon Palace was no threat to the Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace. At this moment, the Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace was shocked. Streams of dragon blood surged within the body of the East Sea Dragon Palace's Supreme Elder like a raging river. The Supreme Elder's body trembled. In the next moment, bloodline power, which was only slightly less pure than Long Taiji's, surged out. With blood as the sacrifice and dragon as the name. Ancient ancestors, please listen to the prayers of your descendants and open the door. Dragon Bloodburn. The Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace growled. The next moment, the bloodline power suddenly ignited into a ball of flame. Above the gate of the true Martial Dragon Palace, a powerful and mysterious rune suddenly appeared. With the infusion of the bloodline of the Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace, it released a terrifying power. Suddenly, the entire true Martial Dragon Palace trembled slightly. The next moment, the gate of the true Martial Dragon Palace shook slightly. The Grand Shang Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace had successfully activated the gate with his bloodline power. Then Tianyang saw. The gate suddenly disappeared and turned into wisps of silver spatial energy. The power of space gathered in front of the door, forming a dazzling spatial door. It was connected to the true Martial Dragon Palace. Go! The Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace paled a little because of the blood sacrifice. Then his face changed, and he stretched out his hand. A powerful suction force emerged and grabbed Long Taiji. Then, it brought Long Taiji into the spatial door. The Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace went in. Let's go. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw this. They flew toward the spatial door. No one knew how long the spatial door could last and how many opportunities there were in the true Martial Dragon Palace. Naturally, they all rushed to be first, afraid of falling behind. There were also some people who did not pass the Dragon Gate Divine Steel, but stayed to take advantage of the situation. As soon as they entered the true Martial Dragon Palace, they were sent flying by a terrifying force. This force was much stronger than when the Tyrant King mistakenly tried to pass the Dragon Gate Divine Steel. Those who were sent flying had their bones shattered and their organs ruptured. They were on the verge of death. At this moment, Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. He turned his head and looked in a certain direction. There was a wasteland there. It was empty. It was an illusion. Tianyang muttered to himself. Then, he stepped into the spatial door with Ling Yuhan. When everyone who passed the Dragon Gate Divine Steel entered the spatial door, Tianyang stared at the area that he had been looking at. Suddenly, a trace of death aura appeared. The true Martial Dragon Palace actually forbids the use of spells? Tianyang raised his eyebrows when he felt his body fill up again. He could use his quintessential origin energy as if it was his own arm. Previously, he was invincible in the forbidden space because the forbidden space did not restrict his physical body or soul. The physical strength and soul strength of others were far inferior to Tianyang's. This was why they were so weak. Now that the true Martial Dragon Palace forbade the use of spells, those people posed a great threat to Tianyang. However, I'll deal with whatever comes my way. Even without the advantages of my soul strength and physical strength, I'm not inferior to those people. Tianyang smiled with a proud look on his face. In the past, he could even kill the patriarch of the Golden Flame Nine-Headed Lion Clan, a Heaven Ascension Stage 6 elite. Now, the strongest person here was only at Heaven Ascension Stage 6. It did not make sense that Tianyang, who had become so much stronger, could not defeat them. Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree. You should be familiar with the true Martial Dragon Palace, right? Tianyang thought. The Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree spoke. Yes, I grew up in the true martial dragon palace for 3,000 years. I'm very familiar with the things in the true martial dragon palace. If I'm not wrong, new master, you're now in the most precious place of the true martial dragon palace for the dragon clan. The ascending dragon palace. The Navagraha dragon flame tree said excitedly. Tianyang's body trembled. A sharp ray of light suddenly burst out from his eyes. Legend has it that there are three most precious places in the true martial dragon palace. The first is the true martial dragon emperor's treasury. The dragon emperor pagoda is the treasury, and the true martial dragon palace's treasury is the best treasure. Only the true martial dragon emperor's favorite items would be placed in the true martial dragon palace. If I can find the treasury and take a few treasures, I'll be able to break even. Premier Qi Yin flew in the sky, heavenly flames burning beneath his feet. At this moment, he felt like a bird flying freely in the sky, and a fish swimming freely in the sea. Previously, he had been suppressed by Tianyang because he did not have true yuan. How sullen had that been? Now, his true yuan had returned. The second is the ascending dragon palace. However, I don't have the dragon bloodline. It's useless there. The third is where I'm going now, Dinghai Tower. Premier Qi Yin laughed wildly. An ancient parchment that seemed to have come from ancient times glowed faintly in his hand. There's a scale of the true martial dragon emperor in Dinghai Tower, and it's a reverse scale. A dragon's reverse scale changes once every 10,000 years. It contains an incomparably terrifying power. And now, I'm near Dinghai Tower. The heavens are on my side. Tianyang, prepare to die. Chapter 837. The Rising Dragon Palace. In his previous life, Tianyang had never entered the tomb of the Dragon King. Firstly, the dragon tribe was not as weak as they were now. Whether it was the old dragon sage who had the strength to call himself an emperor or the many dragon descendants, they could spread the name of the dragon tribe throughout the continent. At that time, the dragon tribe and the human tribe were almost equal in strength. At that time, who would dare to dig up the ancestral tomb of the dragon tribe? Although Tianyang's strength could suppress the dragon tribe, he had not cultivated the 9 refined dragon body and was not interested in the dragon emperor Jinwu. Therefore, Tianyang knew nothing about the tomb of the Dragon King. The Rising Dragon Palace was used by the Dragon Emperor Jinwu to refine his dragon body and improve it. The Rising Dragon Palace contains the blood of the dragon tribe that the Dragon Emperor Jinwu collected from various worlds. There are all kinds of blood, but the lowest level is of the true dragon level. The Navagraha dragon flame tree said excitedly. Hearing that, Tianyang's eyes lit up. Countless dragon blood? Tianyang now had a way to cultivate the next step of the divine dragon body, the ancestral dragon body. Unfortunately, he lacked resources. Even for Tianyang, it was extremely difficult to collect resources that could improve the physical body of a half-step to Heaven Ascension Realm to the point where he could easily kill a Heaven Ascension Realm elite. Even when he had obtained the Navagraha dragon flame tree and collected the Navagraha dragon fruit, he did not use it immediately because of this reason. Tianyang's divine dragon body was like a bottomless pit. A few Navagraha dragon fruits were useless. However, for now, the blood of the true dragons collected by the Dragon Emperor Jinwu from various worlds was definitely enough. The great emperors of the ancient age could tour the surrounding worlds, but I still have to go through the heavenly tribulation. However, when he thought of the Dragon Emperor Jinwu's carefree tour of the various worlds, compared to himself who had to go through the heavenly tribulation when he left the world, Tianyang's mood became complicated. Hearing that, the Navagraha dragon flame tree also shut up. Now, you're near the entrance of the Ascending Dragon Palace. There are 3 huge blood pools in the Ascending Dragon Palace. It's divided into the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades. The 3rd grade is all formed by the blood of the true dragon. If you can successfully refine your body, you can directly condense your blood into the true dragon bloodline. The 2nd tier consists of the blood of a pure-blooded dragon and several droplets of divine dragon blood essence. Even though there are only a few droplets of divine dragon blood essence, The density of the bloodline and the ferocity of the tempering of the body far surpasses that of the third tier. The Navagraha dragon flame tree explained. It was also afraid that Tianyang would jump in without knowing anything. When that happened, he would not be able to withstand the ascending dragon palace's body-tempering powers and would definitely die. In ancient times, there were many dragon clan geniuses who died in the ascending dragon palace because of body refinement. Even if it was the safest third class, countless corpses were buried. What about the first class? Tianyang's eyes flickered as he asked. Hearing that, the Navagraha dragon flame tree also explained. The first class is the most terrifying and strongest of the 3 dragon blood pools. There is only about a small puddle of dragon blood in there. However, the weakest of them is the blood of a heavenly ascension realm true dragon who has condensed a trace of divine dragon bloodline. The core of the first-class dragon blood pool is 3 droplets of true divine dragon blood essence from a Wu Zun realm true dragon, said the Navagraha dragon flame tree. Even though Tianyang could not see the Navagraha dragon flame tree, he could sense it. The Navagraha dragon flame tree's tone was unusually serious. Even the true martial dragon emperor could not enter it to cultivate. Every time he finished cultivating, his flesh would be torn apart, said the Navagraha dragon flame tree in an extremely serious tone. Even though it had a contract with Tianyang, the Navagraha dragon flame tree would never go against Tianyang's wishes. However, the Navagraha dragon flame tree had to say it. No matter how unpleasant it sounded, it had to say it. The ascending dragon palace had a nice name. Countless giant dragons would undergo a life evolution here. Their ordinary bloodlines would be upgraded to true dragon bloodlines, making their true dragon bloodlines purer and more condensed. However, the number of dead dragons in the ascending dragon palace was far more than the number of giant dragons that had successfully upgraded. Even the true martial dragon emperor's flesh would be torn apart. Tianyang raised his eyebrows. A strange expression appeared on his face. The true martial dragon emperor was the great emperor of the dragon clan. Below the Wu Zun realm, he could be said to have the strongest physical body in history. Unless Tianyang cultivated the 9 refined dragon body to the ancestral dragon body and reached the peak of the heavenly ascension realm, it would be difficult for him to suppress the true martial dragon emperor. This was the advantage of the dragon clan. Tianyang was a pure-blooded human after all. This cannot be changed. However, even such an existence could be injured by the ascending dragon blood pool. How strong was the first-class blood pool? That's right. The Navagraha dragon tree had to go against its conscience to comfort its new master, who had unlimited talent and a bright future ahead of him. The true martial dragon emperor would indeed be torn apart in the first-class blood pool. However, that was after cultivating for 81 years. In the first 10 years, the true martial dragon emperor had not been injured at all. The Navagraha dragon tree played a word game. It was a kind word game. After all, the first-class blood pool was too strong for Tianyang, who had not even passed the heavenly ascension tribulation. However, if that's the case, then all the more reason to choose it. Tianyang's eyes suddenly flickered with dazzling light, and his face was filled with excitement. The true dragon blood pool alone would definitely not be enough for him to cultivate the ancestral dragon body. Even if it was mixed with a few drops of divine dragon blood essence, it would not be enough. However, a blood pool made of divine dragon blood would definitely be enough. Perhaps the ancestral dragon body that Tianyang cultivated would be even stronger than Crimson Dragon Wu Zun's. The Navagraha dragon tree was speechless. It was hard to imagine that Tianyang would still choose the first-class blood pool after hearing about the true martial dragon emperor's achievements. The third-class dragon blood pool. The third class was called the prodigies pool. Only the dragon race's prodigies could enter to temper their bones and refine their souls. The second class was called the emperor's pool. Only those who had reached the martial emperor realm or the sovereign realm had the ability to enter. Even the true martial dragon emperor mostly cultivated in the emperor's pool. The first class was called the emperor's pool, the supreme pool. Only a true supreme being could cultivate in there. Even the true martial dragon emperor did not dare to casually enter it. He had cultivated for 81 years previously because he had reached a bottleneck. As for the true martial dragon emperor, after breaking through the bottleneck, it had taken him more than 100 years to recover. This was also the reason why the Navagraha dragon tree wanted to stop Tianyang no matter what. Only primes were allowed to enter the supreme pool. Say no more. I've made up my mind. Tianyang smiled. The drop of divine dragon blood essence in his divine dragon core that had grown to a certain size in his heart continued to circulate. Tianyang could also sense it. Not far away, there were waves of heart-palpitating energy waves. Chapter 838. Ascending Dragon Palace. Supreme Pool. In the end, the Navagraha dragon tree failed to persuade Tianyang. After all, Tianyang usually did not make a decision. Once he made a decision, no one could go against it. Although the Navagraha dragon tree had a deep foundation and vast knowledge, and had proven the terror and power of the Supreme Pool for various aspects, it could not stop Tianyang's determination. Tianyang's Tao was the Tao of the sword. It was indomitable and could break through all obstacles. Tianyang's Saint Tao of the origin was also the Tao of the sword. Although the Tao of life and death was also a Saint Tao, it was only an auxiliary Tao. Sanguinati, how is your recovery? At that moment, Heavenly Sun spoke. Back in the ancient times, the true martial dragon emperor was at the same level as the earthly emperor. It was not impossible to hide something like the earthly emperor's spiritual herb garden from the dragon emperor's mausoleum. However, Tianyang could handle the recent attacks by himself, so he did not let Sanguinati do it. Sanguinati had not fought for almost a year. His bones were probably rusty. Young master, I have recovered to my peak. As long as I have a physical body, I can recover to the peak of Heaven Ascension Stage LV6 in my previous life. Cultivate a little more, and you can completely recover to your peak. Heaven Ascension Stage LV7. Sanguinati suddenly heard Tianyang's call and hurriedly said. Recently, as Tianyang's strength increased, Sanguinati's importance also decreased. Sanguinati was helpless. Although he had the foundation of his previous life and was much better than Tianyang, he had to start all over again. However, Tianyang's speed of improvement was still so terrifying. Even if he used his full strength now, he might not be Tianyang's match. How much of your current combat strength can you use? Tianyang asked calmly. Sanguinati immediately replied, Heaven Ascension Stage LV5. That's good. Apart from a useless Fey ancestral diagram, you and the 9 Brilliance Dragon Flame Tree will be responsible for protecting the two of us. As for the infant Soul Fruit Tree, it will guard the interior. As long as I'm not at a critical point in my cultivation, wake me up immediately if there's a strong enemy that I can't defeat. Tianyang said. Inside the Earth Emperor's herb garden, the 9 Luminaries Dragon Flame Tree and Sanguinati both expressed their agreement. Sanguinati had already followed Tianyang and experienced countless battles. Naturally, he knew how terrifying this young master, who was incomparably dazzling in both his previous life and this life, was. As for the Navagraha Dragon Tree, although it wasn't very clear about Tianyang's true identity, it still didn't know. He also realized how terrifying Tianyang was. However, the Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree did not provide much help other than a few Navagraha Dragon fruits and some information. The 9 Luminaries Dragon Flame Tree desperately needed a battle to prove its worth. As for the Fey ancestral diagram, there was no need to consider its worth. Other than the secret skill of 7 stars, it was completely useless. Other than the power of the Fey ancestral diagram, it was useless. Otherwise, the true martial dragon emperor wouldn't have been able to snatch it away so quickly. After giving out his orders, Tianyang was finally relieved. It was impossible for Tianyang to let go of an opportunity like the Ascending Dragon Palace. Since it was going to benefit others, why not himself? Although the 9 Luminaries Dragon Flame Tree had a dragon in its name, the power of the dragon blood was useless to this tree. Sanguinati had already turned into a skeleton. Naturally, he didn't need the dragon blood to refine his body. Tianyang didn't need to be mentioned. As for Ling Yuhan, although Ling Yuhan's bloodline wasn't related to the dragon bloodline, they were both part of the Fey clan. Ling Yuhan could also refine her body through the dragon blood pool. She might even be able to jump to the half-step ascension realm, or even LV1 ascension realm. Yes, the 9 luminaries dragon flame tree and Sanguinati replied loudly. The 9 luminaries dragon flame tree immediately revealed its true form. It wasn't like the tree trunk that Tianyang had seen before. It was as exaggerated as a green mountain, but it was still tens of thousands of feet tall. If not for the fact that the owner of the Dragon Emperor's tomb was a dragon, and the fact that it was built according to the activities of a dragon, the 9 luminaries dragon flame tree's true form would have blown up the ascending dragon palace. As for the Blood Sword Emperor, he also summoned his blood sword. The soul fire in his eyes burned fiercely, revealing a murderous and bloodthirsty battle intent. He hadn't fought for a long time. Today, he was naturally looking forward to the arrival of a strong enemy. Ling Yuhan chose the Emperor Pool. The Supreme Pool was formed by the blood of the gods. Even if a divine dragon wasn't at the godly realm, it wouldn't be easy to fight against it. It was the same even if the 9-tailed heavenly moon fox bloodline was known as the bloodline of the gods. However, the Emperor Pool was also quite a challenge for Ling Yuan. At this moment, Tianyang had already stepped into the Supreme Pool. The Supreme Pool wasn't big. It was only about 100 meters wide, and its depth was only slightly more than 2 meters. However, the terrifying energy contained in this tiny Supreme Pool was countless times greater than the Prodigy Pool and Monarch Pool combined. It was incomparable. Under the sunlight, the sun shone. The dragon blood in the Supreme Pool shone with a golden light. It was completely different from the blood-red pools in the Genius Pool and Emperor Pool. Ouch! Tianyang had just sat down cross-legged when his pores automatically began to absorb the energy around him. The surrounding blood pools seemed to be boiling. Countless streams of terrifying dragon chi ruthlessly pressed towards heavenly sun. Roar! At the same time, a dragon roar sounded. After being here for millions of years, the dragon blood in the Supreme Pool had long lost its intelligence. However, the innate spirituality of the dragon's blood erupted with dragon roars that were sufficient to shake the minds of heavenly ascension stage powerhouses. However, Tianyang was cultivating. Humph! Tianyang snorted coldly, and the divine desolate heaven spirit art in his body circulated rapidly. Rays of bright golden light appeared in Tianyang's dantian. The next moment, a huge amount of true essence flowed in parallel in the meridians, erupting with an extremely terrifying traction force. Under the effect of this traction force, within the dragon blood, an extremely terrifying energy rushed over. Refine for me, Tianyang growled and formed a seal with both hands. Middle-grade heaven tier martial technique, devouring heaven seal. At the same time, true flames of destruction out. Flames surrounded him as the seal devoured. Tianyang entered the most perfect cultivation state in an instant. Roar! Sensing that its energy was being crazily devoured by the human in front of it, the dragon roar condensed from the Supreme Pool Dragon Blood's intelligence roared angrily again. One roar, shattering heaven and earth. The rolling dragon's might was released, mixed with a terrifying soul attack, and attacked Tianyang's soul sea fiercely. In the cultivation state, if the soul was attacked, then at least it would go berserk, and at worst, it would explode and die. 7-star secret technique. Star Heavenly Spirit Shield. Heavenly Sun let out a low roar as 3 stars appeared, transforming into a shield. Boom! The ferocious dragon's roar blasted violently on the shield formed by the stars, and it bounced back violently. Seeing this, the Navagraha dragon tree, who was still worried about Tianyang, was dumbfounded. It thought that Tianyang was overestimating himself by challenging the Supreme Pool. Chapter 839. Streams of terrifying and violent energy surged toward Tianyang's dantian. In the eyes of ordinary people, the terrifying energy torrent was enough to turn a person into minced meat. However, Tianyang was using the devouring heaven seal to devour it. As for Tianyang, he merely let out a muffled groan as he was not used to it. A half-step to heavenly completion realm actually has so many powerful abilities. No wonder he dared to enter the supreme pool to cultivate. The Navagraha dragon flame tree couldn't help but exclaim when he saw Tianyang's situation. Previously, the Navagraha dragon flame tree thought that Tianyang was overestimating himself. If it weren't for the master-slave contract, the Navagraha dragon flame tree would have stopped Tianyang. However, the Navagraha dragon flame tree had no intention of stopping him now. The supreme pool was a terrifying forbidden area for ordinary people. However, it was a true supreme prodigy. It was a great opportunity. At Tianyang's heart, the divine dragon's dragon core was beating along with his heart. Every time it contracted and expanded, a large amount of divine dragon's dragon energy would be absorbed into his body. The 108 divine dragon runes on the divine dragon's dragon core shone brighter and brighter. Tianyang's face darkened slightly. The devouring heaven seal erupted once again. Boom! The torrent of energy surged into the divine dragon's dragon core. Tianyang snorted and formed a seal with both hands. The divine dragon's dragon core released a dazzling light and rapidly refined the divine dragon's dragon energy. In the next moment, the divine dragon's dragon core absorbed the divine dragon's dragon energy to the limit. Tianyang also took out the Navagraha fire dragon fruits, body-tempering saint fruits. A total of 9 Navagraha fire dragon fruits floated in front of Tianyang. Tianyang didn't hesitate. With a thought, the 9 Navagraha fire dragon fruits instantly split open. They turned into liquid and poured into Tianyang's body. If others were to see this, they would definitely reprimand Tianyang for wasting natural resources. The Navagraha fire dragon fruit was a powerful treasure that was known as the body-refining saint fruit. Even in this world, there were not many that could compare to it. An ordinary person would need a long time to digest just one pill. But now, Tianyang was consuming 9 pills at once. Not enough. It's still not enough. Tianyang's eyes flickered as he felt the raging medicinal power in his body. His face sank slightly. Even though he had already consumed 9 Navagraha flame dragon fruits at once, his starving body still showed no signs of satiation. Devouring heaven's seal, devour. Tianyang bellowed as he activated the divine desolate heavenly spirit art. The gigantic black vortex formed by the devouring heaven seal once again released an extremely terrifying devouring power. In the surroundings, the energy within the divine dragon blood essence was frantically drawn out and surged into Tianyang's body, turning into a portion of the divine dragon core's boundless energy. Finally, after absorbing nearly half of the divine dragon blood essence in the entire supreme pool, Tianyang's starving body and divine dragon core had both reached the most perfect realm. The previous Tianyang had already cultivated his divine dragon body to the peak in terms of realm. But only now did Tianyang have enough energy to display the power of the peak divine dragon body. No wonder Crimson Dragon Wu Zun has never tried to break through the 6th refinement. It turns out that the power of this divine dragon body is already so powerful. Tianyang sat cross-legged in the supreme pool and muttered to himself. At this moment, with his fist as the center, the space within a radius of 10 meters would explode with cracks. If he punched out with all his strength, no one, including Shirkaitian and the Bronze Man, would be able to block it. If Tianyang broke through to the peak of the heavenly completion realm, just the strength of his physical body alone would be able to shatter the universe and reach the Wu Zun realm. However, since I've already stepped into the supreme pool, how can I come out if I don't become a supreme? Since I have reached perfection, the next step is to break and rebuild. Tianyang roared to the sky. In the next moment, the divine dragon's dragon core abruptly shattered. Tianyang spat out a mouthful of blood, which landed on the supreme pool. The supreme pool sensed the influx of blood and once again released a violent energy that attacked Tianyang's body. Tianyang's body immediately fell from its previous perfect state to its current state, as fragile as glass. The divine dragon core was the condensation of all the power of the 9 refinements dragon body, since Tianyang had condensed the dragon core. It could be said that it was the core of this body's dragon power. However, the heavenly sun was resolute and resolute, shattering it. There can be no construction without destruction, only construction after destruction. This was the cultivation method of the ancestral dragon body that Tianyang had comprehended. Only when Tianyang looked back 10,000 years later did he realize that the cultivation method he had comprehended was very different from Crimson Dragon Wuzun's ancestral dragon body. He had walked a path of supremacy that far surpassed the original author. Blarg. Tianyang spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale. Although one's physical strength wouldn't decline with the shattering of the divine dragon's dragon core, Tianyang would still suffer unimaginable pain after shattering the divine dragon's dragon core. The divine dragon bloodline that had been under control previously was now surging wildly in Tianyang's body, even resonating with the divine dragon blood essence in the supreme pool. One internal and one external caused great damage to Tianyang's body. Tianyang's aura had also fallen to its limit, but he still maintained his consciousness. In his soul ocean, the heavenly sword guarded his last bit of clarity, just condensing dragon marks on the dragon pellet. Even if I cultivate to 108 Dragon Emperor dragon marks in the end, it will only be on the dragon pellet. If I want to become a sage and become an ancestor, how can I just rely on the dragon core and dragon marks? Otherwise, I can use my entire body as the dragon core and draw dragon marks on my physical body. If others heard this, even the true martial dragon emperor would be shocked. The dragon mark represented the life force of a true dragon. Even someone as noble as the dragon emperor only had dragon marks on his dragon core. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to draw dragon marks on his entire body. Moreover, Tianyang was a human, a pure-blooded human. If he was careless when drawing dragon marks on his physical body, his body would explode and he would die. But Tianyang did not lack courage on his path of cultivation. Since this path was full of thorns and no one could walk it, then he would pave a bloody path for himself. Tianyang roared in his heart. In the next moment, the shattered dragon core suddenly turned into terrifying energy and poured into Tianyang's body, causing Tianyang's physical body to improve crazily. In the blink of an eye, Tianyang had already fused with the divine dragon blood essence and turned into his first dragon mark. Tianyang's body trembled slightly, as if he could not bear the fact that this dragon mark carried the divine dragon bloodline that the previous 108 dragon marks could carry. However, Tianyang did not care at all. If he wanted to refine the ancestral dragon body, this was only the beginning. Swallow. Another divine dragon bloodline entered his body. The second dragon mark was formed. Swallow, 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 swallow. Tianyang roared. In the sovereign pool, the blood essence of countless divine dragons flowed into Tianyang's body, carving lines on his broken body. Chapter 840. Ancestral dragon marks rapidly formed on Tianyang's body. Similarly, the supreme pool's water level was also rapidly decreasing. The supreme pool was formed by the divine dragon's blood essence. Although the quality was not great, the energy it contained was terrifying to the extreme. Ordinary people would need a long time to refine a drop of it. As for Tianyang, he had not even consumed half of the divine dragon body that he had starved for several years. However, in just a few dozen seconds, the supreme pool's water level had decreased by a full 1/3. Tianyang had only condensed 20 ancestral dragon marks. Although 20 ancestral dragon marks were comparable to more than 2,000 divine dragon marks, Tianyang was still not satisfied. He had spent a lot of effort to condense the true dragon marks and condense the most perfect 108. Now, how could he only condense 20? Navagraha Fire Dragon Fruit, it's time to use you. At this moment, Tianyang suddenly had a thought. The Navagraha Fire Dragon Fruit that had been swallowed by Tianyang but had not been refined, immediately released a terrifying power. This power was captured by Tianyang's broken body, and he devoured it as if he was thirsting for it. Every cell, every organ, every system seemed to be happy because of this. Following the Navagraha fire dragon fruit's power, the ancestral dragon marks on Tianyang's body had drawn another 9. Now, there were already 29 ancestral dragon marks. In terms of physical strength, even 3 of the previous Tianyang would not be able to match one of the current Tianyang. As expected of the most mature Navagraha fire dragon fruit, that the Navagraha fire dragon tree had brewed for 1,000,000 years. Such power was indeed extraordinary. Tianyang thought in his heart. However, he was still not satisfied. 29. 108. The difference between them was too great. Swallow again. Tianyang roared as he quickly circulated the divine, desolate, heavenly spirit art. In the next moment, everything around him began to tremble. If it wasn't for the fact that Tianyang didn't need any other energy to form the dragon mark, the devouring power would have turned everything in the surroundings into energy in an instant and poured into Tianyang's body. But, not far away, the dragon blood of the Heaven's Pride Pond and the Emperor Pond became restless after sensing the devouring force. The true dragon blood in the Prodigy's pool covered an area of over 10,000 meters. The depth of the pool was at least 100 meters. With such a huge pool, it would be no problem for 1,000 dragon tribes, sky prides, to cultivate at the same time. At this moment, the enormous Heaven's Pride Pond suddenly shuddered. In the next moment, the entire pool turned into a torrent and rushed toward Tianyang. Tianyang's figure did not even shudder. His flesh automatically opened the gate of devour and devoured all the dragon blood in the Heaven's Proud Pond. 30th, 31st, 32nd in the Emperor Pond. The moment the Emperor Pond became restless, Ling Yuhan came to her senses and immediately knew the reason. At this moment, her body was just a little bit away from being completely refined. However, after realizing that Tianyang needed it, she let go of her control. He immediately released his control over the imperial pool, allowing all of the dragon blood to fly out and enter Tianyang's body. 33rd, 34th, 35th, the influx of the 2 huge dragon blood pools immediately gave Tianyang a boost. Countless meridians in his body operated at the same time. Ancestral dragon marks were formed rapidly. In a short while, more than 50 ancestral dragon marks were formed on Tianyang's body. Adding up all the remaining supreme pools, it's enough. Tianyang revealed a satisfied smile. The devouring power in his body erupted again and rapidly devoured the surrounding supreme pool divine dragon blood essence. The supreme pool's water level also dropped again. There's actually a restriction in the Dinghai restaurant. Damn it. At this moment, outside the ascending dragon palace, a man with injuries all over his body and flames under his feet was flying in an extremely sorry state. His left arm was unbelievably white and tender. It was obvious that it had just grown out. This person's left arm had just been cut off. However, with the Dragon Emperor's reverse scale in my hands, there's no one in the true martial dragon palace who can go against me. With the power of the Dragon Emperor, what's so difficult about sweeping through the world? The Dragon Emperor's inheritance will definitely be mine. Supremacy Scarlet Flame said excitedly. The Dragon Emperor's reverse scale in his hand shone with rays of light. Just as Supremacy Scarlet Flame had expected, the Dragon Emperor's reverse scale hid an incomparably powerful and terrifying dragon power. Even Supremacy Scarlet Flame couldn't control this kind of dragon power well. If it burst out at once, even a peak Ascension Realm powerhouse would find it difficult to withstand. At this moment, Supremacy Scarlet Flame was planning to find a place to cultivate and recuperate. When the news of the Dragon Emperor's inheritance spread, he would sweep through the world with the reverse scale in his hand. This place seems to be near the Ascending Dragon Palace. That's right, the Ascending Dragon Palace must be extremely suitable for cultivation. I didn't expect that there would be opportunities everywhere I go. Supremacy Scarlet Flame laughed. At this moment, although he had lost an arm and was seriously injured, he still had the strength of a 5th-level Ascension Realm. In this true martial dragon palace, he could do whatever he wanted. Supremacy Scarlet Flame was naturally not worried that the ascending dragon palace had already been occupied by others. It really is the ascending dragon palace. Not long after, Supremacy Scarlet Flame arrived outside the ascending dragon palace. With a look of surprise on his face, Supremacy Scarlet Flame chuckled and directly pushed open the door. Boom! A terrifying attack struck towards Supremacy Scarlet Flame's face. You're not even at the 4th level of the Ascension Realm, and you dare to attack me? Supremacy Scarlet Flame smiled disdainfully and reached out to destroy the flaming meteor. At this moment, an even larger and more terrifying flaming meteor shower ruthlessly attacked Supremacy Scarlet Flame. Looks like there's someone inside. The smile on Supremacy Scarlet Flame's face became even more mocking. The person inside was quite lucky to be able to enter the Ascending Dragon Palace as soon as it opened. However, it was better to come at the right time than to come early. At this moment, Supremacy Scarlet Flame had already obtained the Dragon Emperor's reverse scale. With terrifying power, he could naturally get whatever he wanted. 7 kills sword art, 7th kill. At this moment, a violent roar sounded. One after another, the word kill condensed and ruthlessly attacked Supremacy Scarlet Flame. Oh, you actually used killing to prove your Tao. Supremacy Scarlet Flame raised his brows, but he still chuckled. But you're only at the 4th level of the Ascension Realm. You're still trash. Supremacy Scarlet Flame casually waved his hand, and the heavenly flames turned into a flaming storm that ruthlessly attacked forward. Boom! Sanguinati, who had just attacked, was struck in the chest by this attack. Several of his ribs were broken, and he fell to the ground. Countless of his soul flames had been extinguished. As for the Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree, it wasn't any better. On the tree crown, leaves fell one after another, and it was also injured. Cultivating in the ruins was extremely dangerous. No matter how careful one was, there would still be people who would come to ambush them. The Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree and Sanguinati, who had just climbed up, both knew. This time, the person who came was terrifyingly strong. Supremacy Scarlet Flame. Chapter 841. Chi Yin Supreme. Sanguinati's expression changed slightly. He had heard of this name many times when he was roaming Heaven Continent with Tianyang. He was one of the strongest people in the continent, in existence at the peak of Heaven Ascension Stage Level 5. Now that he had obtained the opportunity in the Dragon Emperor's tomb, his true strength was probably far beyond that. Looks like he's a terrifying opponent. Sanguinati chuckled. In his eyes, the soul fire burned with the same burning fighting spirit. He had not fought for a long time. Cultivation. When one reached Sanguinati's level, longevity was no longer the only requirement. If one wanted longevity, one could find a place to live peacefully until death. Wouldn't that be the same? One could even dominate a region and become a local overlord. However, a true expert would never be satisfied. They would only become stronger, stronger, and stronger, just to witness this beautiful and vast world. At this moment, when Sanguinati signed the contract with Tianyang, the 9 Luminaries Dragon Flame Tree had such a mentality. Oh, you actually recognized me? Chi Yin Supreme did not recognize the 9 Luminaries Dragon Flame Tree in Sanguinati. When Prime Crimson Flame had noticed the heavenly sun, the Blood Sword Monarch had already gradually calmed down and cultivated in seclusion. As for the Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree, other than the Bronze Man and Ling Yuhan, no one else alive knew that it was connected to the heavenly sun. For a moment, Chi Yin Supreme did not expect that the person cultivating in the Ascending Dragon Palace was the person he had always wanted to kill, Tianyang. However, a tree of unknown race and a member of the Ghost Clan, although I don't know which force they are from, they are still too inexperienced to stop me. Chi Yin Supreme chuckled. In the next moment, Sanguinati's expression changed drastically, and he slashed out with the blood sword in his hand. 7 killing sword art, 3rd killing move, 4th killing move. Sanguinati let out a furious roar as he slashed forward with the blood sword in his hand, unleashing a shocking murderous aura. And at this time, Supreme Crimson Flame's figure suddenly vanished from where he stood. The place where he reappeared was where the two sword lights had struck. You actually managed to predict my location? Not bad, not bad, but if you're not strong enough, you'll still die. Supreme Chi Yan's eyebrows arched up, as if he were surprised. But he still sneered. The heavenly flame in his hand burned fiercely. 9 Revolution Heavenly Flame Fist. Supreme Crimson Flame roared out loud. The true essence that had been suppressed in his body for a long time began to surge out like a tsunami. The heavenly flame instantly expanded to the maximum. It was like a wild dragon that had broken free from its cage. It charged towards Sanguinati fiercely. Sanguinati was able to be bestowed the title of Emperor. Even if he was the lowest-ranked Emperor, he still had his own uniqueness. Killing to prove one's Tao, as well as his ridiculously rich combat experience, allowed him to instantly predict Supreme Chi Yan's movements. However, strength. Even though Supreme Chi Yan's every move was within Sanguinati's expectations, Sanguinati's well-prepared attack was still defeated. It was easily defeated. Bang! A loud sound rang out. Sanguinati's entire body was struck by a terrifying force that was difficult to block. He crashed into the wall of the ascending dragon palace. His soul fire pulsed violently. However, it was still shining and had not been extinguished. However, many of his bones were also broken. Without a physical body, it's indeed troublesome. Sanguinati gritted his teeth and stared at Supreme Chi Yan, who was walking towards the depths of the ascending dragon palace. He could sense that Tianyang had already entered a crucial period of cultivation. He absolutely could not allow Supreme Chi Yan to go in and disturb Tianyang. Meteor Flame. At this time, a loud roar suddenly rang out. Balls of dragon flame meteors instantly condensed. 1,000 Leaves Dragon Flame Seal. With another loud roar, leaves from an Navagraha dragon flame tree floated down and turned into a ball of blazing dragon flame in midair. The next moment, this blazing dragon flame formed a huge seal. Together with the flaming meteors from before, it charged towards Supreme Chi Yan. Although the Navagraha dragon flame tree was not good at fighting, its combat strength was definitely not to be underestimated. A tree actually has such power? Seeing this, Supreme Chi Yan raised his eyebrows and revealed a trace of surprise. However, Supreme Chi Yan casually waved his hand, and the aura of a peak 6th level Heaven Ascension realm was released. It's a pity that you're still trash in front of me. Meteor Flame, 1,000 Leaves Dragon Flame Seal. It instantly shattered, sensing the powerful aura of a peak 6th level Heaven Ascension realm. The Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree and Sanguinati also revealed expressions of despair. Peak 6th level Heaven Ascension realm. Who would have thought that Supreme Chi Yan's harvest in the Dragon Emperor Pagoda would be so great that he had already stepped into such a realm? A 7th level Heaven Ascension realm Ancient Shrine Grand Elder was enough to look down on the entire Heaven continent. As for the 6th level Heaven Ascension realm Patriarch Golden Flame, he was already the strongest of the demon race in the past. One had to know that in the vast demon race, there was only one Patriarch Golden Flame. For the human race, a single Ancient Shrine Grand Elder was enough to look down on the entire era. In the end, currently, Supreme Chi Yan had also stepped into the peak of the 6th level of the Heaven Ascension realm. Since Supreme Chi Yan was still in the prime of his life, it wasn't impossible for him to step into the 7th level of the Heaven Ascension realm, just like the Grand Elder of the Ancient Shrine. To deal with such an existence, to deal with too difficult. Since you sense this powerful aura, then stop. Anyway, you bunch of ants won't be a match for me. Supreme Chi Yan turned his head and mocked. Hearing this, Sanguinati struggled for a moment and rushed out of the wall. The blood sword in his hand bloomed with terrifying rays of light, and a shocking roar sounded. 7 kills sword art, 7th kill. At this moment, the Navagraha dragon flame tree shook its canopy. Thousands of leaves fell and were burned to ashes in midair by the flames. As for the flame, it formed a terrifying seal that blotted out the sky and covered the sun. Thousand Leaves Palm. The Navagraha dragon flame tree roared. At this moment, the two powerhouses both exploded with their strongest attacks. Oomph. Seeing this, Supreme Chi Yan's face suddenly sank. Stubborn resistance. In the next moment, heavenly flames rose. The Thousand Leaves Palm exploded again, and the trunk of the Navagraha dragon flame tree suffered terrible damage. As for Sanguinati, his entire chest was almost blown apart. His soul fire was extremely weak, and he was sent flying backward. This move, it severely injured the Navagraha dragon flame tree. It almost killed Sanguinati directly. This is the fate of ants who dare to go against the strong. Seeing this, Supreme Chi Yin smiled disdainfully and slowly walked toward the depths of the ascending dragon palace. Suddenly, a hand stretched out from the darkness. It firmly supported the falling Sanguinati. Then, the owner of this hand also walked out of the darkness. Black hair draped over his shoulders, skin as white as jade, eyes like stars, a handsome face, and standing proudly. He wore ordinary white clothes, but he carried a terrifying sharpness that seemed to break through heaven and earth. A giant dragon seemed to be circling behind him. "You've done well. It's time to rest," Tianyang said softly, and temporarily kept Sanguinati in the Earth Emperor's spirit herb garden. He raised his head, and his eyes suddenly became extremely cold and severe. Chapter 842. As for you, get ready to go to hell. Tianyang's eyes were cold. His eyes flickered with a terrifying light that seemed to come from the netherworld as he looked at Supreme Scarlet Flame. Supreme Scarlet Flame's heart skipped a beat before he reacted. "So it's you, Tianyang." Supreme Scarlet Flame growled, his eyes flashing with rage. Since the first time he fought with Tianyang, he, the dignified Supreme Scarlet Flame, had always been suppressed by Tianyang. Originally, Supreme Scarlet Flame had only attacked Tianyang because of the ancient shrine's arrest warrant. But now, Supreme Scarlet Flame's hatred for Tianyang had reached a terrifying level. It's really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. I didn't expect that the person cultivating in the Rising Dragon Palace. "It's you." Supreme Scarlet Flame roared crazily. He was too happy. Supreme Scarlet Flame was really too happy. Previously, in order to find Tianyang, Supreme Scarlet Flame had stopped at least 7 or 8 times on the road, but he had found nothing. But now, Tianyang had appeared in front of him just like that. "I can finally kill you." Supreme Scarlet Flame laughed loudly. In the next moment, he stepped on his movement technique and circulated his true essence. His entire person instantly disappeared on the spot. Immediately after, Tianyang felt the space behind him distort, and from the void, a fist blasted out. It was the 9 Revolutions Heavenly Flame Fist that burned with heavenly flames. Tianyang snorted coldly and instantly turned left to punch out. It collided fiercely with the 9 Revolutions Heavenly Flame Fist. Boom! Terrifying ripples erupted in space one after another, and the entire Rising Dragon Palace trembled slightly. Not far away, the 9 Luminaries Dragon Flame tree turned pale with fright. It wasn't because of Supreme Scarlet Flame, but because of Tianyang. He could sense that the current Tianyang hadn't even used a trace of true essence or soul power. To deal with Supreme Scarlet Flame's punch, it was only the strength of his physical body. Supreme Scarlet Flame had used his true essence and spiritual fire to attack with a heaven-rank martial skill fist technique. Yet, it had been blocked by Tianyang's pure physical strength. He actually blocked it. Supreme Chi Yin didn't notice anything strange about Tianyang's body. Instead, his complexion darkened. "But you still have to die. Heavenly flame break." Supreme Chi Yin roared once more, urging the powerful heaven fire flames to attack Tianyang once more. The heavenly flame seemed to have the power to destroy the world. Wherever it passed, even the air was repelled, leaving behind fragmented space. The space in front of Tianyang was like glass as huge cracks appeared in it. Then space exploded. It's also a heaven-tier martial skill. The Scarlet Flame Sect's foundation is quite deep. Tianyang smiled when he saw this, but he did not take it head-on. He instantly left the battle and headed straight for the Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree. The Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree was also heavily injured. Although Supreme Chi Yin was now restrained by him, there was no guarantee that Supreme Chi Yin would react and launch a sneak attack. The Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree had suffered such a powerful attack in order to protect him from being disturbed. Tianyang wasn't an ungrateful person, so he naturally couldn't ignore it. However, Tianyang's actions caused Supreme Chi Yin to misunderstand. Ha ha ha. As expected, you can only be forced to flee by this Supreme? It seems that this so-called Demon Venerable is nothing more than this. Supreme Chi Yin laughed heartily. In the next moment, he controlled the heaven fire flames, and his body swam like a dragon, chasing after Sky's sun at extreme speed. Seeing this, Tianyang frowned. Just as he was about to turn around and attack, he was already in front of the Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree. Don't resist, Tianyang said. Then, he placed his palm on the trunk of the Navagraha Dragon Flame Tree and kept it in the Earth Emperor's spiritual herb garden. At this time, Supreme Chi Yin was also stunned when he saw the 100,000-foot-tall tree suddenly disappear. But in less than 1 second, he came to his senses. A sinister smile appeared on his face, and the heavenly flame tree in his hand burned fiercely. Go to hell. Heaven rank martial technique. 9 revolution heavenly flame fist. Supreme crimson flame roared. Flames blazed around him as he punched out. The space shook and distorted. The power of the level 6 heavenly flame tree erupted to the extreme at this moment. Even though Supreme Chi Yin had just entered the peak of level 6 heaven ascension stage not long ago, the power of this punch was enough to kill a level 5 heaven ascension stage cultivator. Insignificant skill. An indifferent laugh came from the mouth of the youth who had turned around. Before Sovereign Chi Yin could react, Tianyang had already punched out with his fist. 108 ancestral dragon marks suddenly appeared on his body. Each of them was equivalent to the previous 108 ancestral dragon marks. In other words, the limit of the dragon power Tianyang could erupt now was equivalent to 108 times of the previous 11,664 ancestral dragon marks. Dragon King Divine Fist, 10,000 dragons slaughtering gods. Tianyang roared. Extremely terrifying ancestral dragon power condensed on Tianyang's fist. This time, the 10,000 dragons slaughtering gods erupted with the most extreme power. Even the creator of the Dragon King Divine Fist could not unleash such terrifying divine power. Tianyang, naturally, could not erupt with the dragon power equivalent to 10,000 ancestral dragon marks all at once. The Supreme Pool, Emperor Pool, Heaven's Pride Pool, 9 Navagraha Dragon Fruits, and the Divine Dragon's Dragon Core were only able to condense 108 ancestral dragon marks. It would take a long time to fill them up. However, Tianyang could still erupt with a terrifying power that far exceeded the previous one. Boom! 10,000 dragons collided fiercely with the fists burning with heavenly flames. The ascending dragon palace trembled violently. Even though the two of them were in midair, terrifying cracks were formed on the ground due to the tremors. For a moment, the entire true martial dragon palace seemed to have an earthquake. What happened? Long Taiji and the Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace, who were searching for treasures, suddenly stopped in their tracks. They raised their heads in disbelief and looked in the direction of Tianyang and Cardinal Flame. Although they could not see anything, they could still feel it. It was a terrifying pressure that crushed their own bloodline. There is actually such a strong dragon bloodline in the true martial dragon palace. The Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace turned pale with fright. Could it be that there was a living dragon in the true martial dragon palace? The Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace wanted to check. Unfortunately, when he wanted to move, he realized that he was actually suppressed by this pressure to the point that he could not move. It was not that his strength was inferior, but the pressure from the depths of his bloodline. Too terrifying. The Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace was shocked. And on the other side, movie Emperor Tion's expression changed. This is the aura of Supreme Scarlet Flame? Could it be that he found Tianyang? Thinking of this, movie Emperor Tion's face immediately darkened. Since that's the case, take that kid's dog life. You can't leave me out. Then, movie Emperor Tion rushed in the direction of the rising dragon palace. This is impossible. Supreme Scarlet Flame was in a daze as he looked at everything in front of him. Tianyang, surrounded by 10,000 dragons, was like a divine dragon's sacred ancestor. How can you boom? Before Supreme Scarlet Flame could finish speaking. Chapter 843. Bang! Supreme Crimson Flame's head could no longer withstand the terrifying power of Tianyang's ancestral dragon, and was directly pierced through. A supreme of a generation, dead? Of course, although his body was destroyed, with Supreme Crimson Flame's strength, it wouldn't be easy for him to die completely. At this moment, Supreme Crimson Flame had already used the Heaven Fire Flames to wrap around his soul and hide in this world. Hiding in his body, he only hoped that his body would fall to the ground as soon as possible. At that time, he could rely on the power of the Heaven Fire Flames to escape once more. At this moment, even though Supreme Crimson Flame was dead, his face was still full of horror. Too strong, simply unimaginably strong. Even the great elder of the ancient shrine that Supreme Crimson Flame had seen was far inferior to Tianyang. Of course, the great elder he had seen was only an avatar, but it was still stronger than Supreme Crimson Flame himself. But what shocked Supreme Crimson Flame the most was not this. Several months ago, Tianyang had been hunted down by him. If it weren't for that mysterious girl, he would have already fallen at his hands. Later, in the forbidden space, Tianyang's soul was invincible. But Supreme Crimson Flame was still confident that he could subdue Tianyang. Now, they hadn't exchanged many moves before Supreme Crimson Flame was directly beheaded. The speed of his progress was too fast, too monstrous. Supreme Crimson Flame secretly calculated and was shocked to discover something. If Tianyang's life as a trash before the age of 15 wasn't fake, then Tianyang was only 21 years old now. He had cultivated for 6 years. Too terrifying. Don't you think it's a bit too late to leave now? At this time, a clear and pleasant voice sounded. But in Supreme Crimson Flame's ears, it was no less than the black and white impermanence's death warrant. Supreme Crimson Flame was just about to activate the Heaven Fire Flames to directly burn his body. But before he could do anything, a terrifying suction force controlled all of his movements. Then it gently sucked. Supreme Crimson Flame left his body and fell into Tianyang's hands. Bang! At this time, Supreme Crimson Flame's body fell to the ground. Supreme Crimson Flame realized that the reason his body hadn't fallen to the ground was because of Tianyang. From the beginning, Tianyang knew that Supreme Crimson Flame's soul wasn't dead. You can't fool me. How could an Ascension Realm powerhouse, whose soul be half transformed into a primordial spirit, be pierced between his eyebrows? Ebon Sun smiled. Hearing this, Sovereign Red Flame's soul felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him from head to toe. How could he know? How could he know that he had already cultivated his soul power to such a level? To an ordinary person, it's naturally impossible for Supreme Qi Yin to detect anything with his soul force. After all, when facing an existence with a weaker soul force than himself, wouldn't he be able to pretend to be as strong as he wants? Soul. Souls be SSSS. Impressive, Tianyang praised. He didn't mean it in a sarcastic way. He had Shun Tian Wuzuan's cultivation memories and all kinds of opportunities to cultivate his primordial spirit to such a level. Supreme Crimson Flame had cultivated the half-transformed primordial spirit on his own. Such talent was really not bad. How could someone who could become the lord of a sacred land be weak? However, to Supreme Crimson Flame, these words were unusually harsh. My soul's half-transformed primordial spirit was powerful? Then wouldn't you be even stronger after seeing through my half-transformed primordial spirit and easily suppressing me? Anyway, I've fallen into your hands now. You can kill me or cut me up as you wish. Supreme Crimson Flame snorted coldly. He was also unyielding. After all, he had fallen into Tianyang's hands. With Tianyang's past behavior, he naturally wouldn't let him go. Instead of begging for mercy and dying in the end, it was better to anger Tianyang and let him give him a quick death. However, this trick didn't have much effect on Tianyang. Tianyang didn't cultivate for long. Adding up his previous and current lives, it was only a few hundred years. It was far inferior to Supreme Crimson Flame in front of him. However, Tianyang had seen all kinds of methods in the cultivation world. After killing so many people, he had seen all kinds of things. Don't think that I'll directly destroy your soul and be happy. I already have a plan on how to deal with you. Tianyang chuckled. Then he called out in the Earth Emperor's spiritual herb garden. Sanguinati. Hearing this, Sanguinati's whole body quivered. He forced his broken body to walk out. Young lord, what are your orders? Sanguinati said respectfully. Although he was in the Earth Emperor's spiritual herb garden, he could see what the battlefield was like. And it was from Tianyang's first-person perspective. Naturally, he could see how weak Paragon's Scarlet Flame, the leader of a generation's holy land, was in front of Tianyang, and how powerful his young master Tianyang was. Now, Tianyang, who had successfully cultivated the ancestral dragon body, was not inferior to Sanguinati in the slightest. You've been dead for 10,000 years. Don't you want to live? Tianyang chuckled. Hearing this, Sanguinati was slightly stunned. What did he mean by not wanting to live? However, in the next moment, Sanguinati's eyes widened. His body trembled violently, and his soul fire jumped crazily. Young lord, you mean? That's right. Tianyang smiled slightly, stretched out his hand, and a suction force erupted. Supreme Crimson Flame's corpse, which fell to the ground and still had a trace of life, fell into Tianyang's hands. Seeing this, Supreme Crimson Flame also panicked. Kid, what do you want to do? Supreme Crimson Flame roared. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled slightly, picked up Supreme Crimson Flame's soul, and used the 7 Stars secret technique. In an instant, Supreme Crimson Flame was pushed back. Kid! Supreme Crimson Flame suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes flickered with rage and fear. If you do this, even if I, Supreme Crimson Flame, go to hell noisy. Tianyang snorted coldly and stretched out his hand. Star strangulation. Boom. Supreme Crimson Flame's consciousness was completely obliterated by Tianyang. Supreme Crimson Flame was finally dead. With Supreme Crimson Flame's death, a pure white flame also flew out from Supreme Crimson Flame's body. Crimson Flame Sex inherited Spiritual Fire, Level 6 Spiritual Fire, Heavenly Flame. Tianyang kept it and searched Supreme Crimson Flame's remnant soul while he was at it. Then, he summoned the true flames of destruction. At this moment, Sanguinati said with a trembling voice, Young lord, you really want to? Hearing this, Tianyang chuckled and nodded. I originally planned to use Ancestor Golden Flame, but thinking that he has 9 heads and you only have 1 head, I'm not used to it. Now that I have one that I can use, if not you, who should I give it to? Could it be that it's not as strong as your strength when you were alive, so you don't like it? Tianyang chuckled. Hearing this, Sanguinati suddenly shook his head. No, of course I don't. Thank you, young lord. In the next moment, Sanguinati's soul flame trembled, flew out of the remnant body, and fell into Supreme Crimson Flame's corpse. Tianyang also smiled slightly. The true flames of destruction burned. Before this, he clearly could have blown apart Sovereign Qian's body, but he had still allowed Sovereign Qian's body to remain mostly intact, all for the sake of this moment. Now he wanted it. Chapter 844. Possession and Resurrection. It was easy to say, but in fact it was extremely difficult to do. Even Sanguinati had to follow Tianyang for a few years, half dead, before he got the right opportunity. If one wanted to possess a body and resurrect, first of all, the soul origin of that soul must not be damaged. Even the slightest bit of soul power must not be consumed. Otherwise, if there was a trace of willpower left in the body's original owner's cells to resist, the soul that was busy controlling the body would not be able to defend itself. Second, the soul must not have been dead for more than 1,000 years. After being dead for 1,000 years, the soul power in the body would have almost solidified, turning into an existence similar to that of a ghost. And after being dead for 10,000 years, except for sanguinati, who had been frozen for 10,000 years, it could be said that the entire body was a gathering and dispersing of the aura of death. To resurrect? Maybe in the next life. As for sanguinati, his soul origin had been damaged, and his soul power had been greatly consumed. He had been dead for 10,000 years. Tianyang had spent a lot of effort to prepare all the conditions for his resurrection. Sanguinati was also aware of this, which was why he was so moved. I have already scattered and integrated Supreme Qian's soul power into Supreme Qian's body, reducing the possibility of the remnant consciousness counterattacking to the lowest. But we can't rule out the possibility that Sovereign Scarlet Flame will launch a final counterattack before he dies. So, after you gain initial control of your body, you must immediately swallow and refine the soul force and seize control of your body as quickly as possible. Tianyang said in a serious tone. Possession, taking the body of a living person, was the hardest of the difficult, not to mention taking the body of a dead person. Possessing a body to resurrect one's soul was only temporary. What Sanguinati wanted was a real resurrection. Yes, Sanguinati, who had entered Supreme Qian's body but had not yet begun to take control of the body, said respectfully. He didn't dare to disobey Tianyang. He obviously wasn't as familiar as Tianyang on how to possess someone and be reborn. As for Tianyang, after his rebirth, he collected a lot of books about rebirth and resurrection. Although most of them were full of mistakes, Tianyang absorbed the useful ones. Otherwise, Tianyang wouldn't have dared to instruct Sanguinati to come back to life. Next, I will use the true flames of destruction to burn this body and increase its strength and compatibility, as well as speed up your refining process. However, it will be extremely painful. If you don't want it, you can tell me. Tianyang's eyes flickered as he said. Spiritual fire was extremely effective against souls, but it had no effect on yang bodies. If he were to use the spirit flame to burn his soul when he was trying to possess his body, he might be able to speed up the fusion of his soul and his body. In fact, he might even be able to bring the two together even more perfectly. Due to the degree of compatibility, the cultivation level after the possession would remain the same for the rest of one's life. However, if the compatibility was high, he might even be able to inherit the original owner's talent and climb to the peak of martial arts again. Although Tianyang's move was carefully calculated and carefully thought out, no one in history had ever done it before. Burning with spiritual fire? Hearing this, Sanguinati's expression changed slightly. He was naturally aware of the terrifying power of spiritual fire on souls. However, in the next moment he nodded heavily. I will obey the young lord's orders. I will definitely sacrifice my life for the young lord. I will not hesitate to go through a mountain of swords and a sea of fire. If I violate this oath, may the heavens and earth destroy me. Sanguinati roared. In the next moment, bolts of lightning condensed in midair. This was the heavenly oath. Seeing this, Tianyang couldn't help but be slightly moved. However, Sanguinati didn't have the slightest bit of regret. In the earthly emperor small world, Tianyang had already saved Sanguinati's life. Now, Tianyang was helping him resurrect. This was equivalent to a debt of 2 lives. Now, even if Sanguinati had handed his fate to Tianyang, he wouldn't hesitate. All right. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled faintly. In the next moment, a ball of flame rose up and expanded in the blink of an eye, spreading beneath Prime Qian's corpse. The current Prime Qi Yan only had a body and soul. However, his most fundamental consciousness had been erased by Tianyang. For a dead powerhouse, this was without a doubt the best body they could have. I remember Sanguinati. He's already in his declining years. He just stepped into the 7th level of the Heaven Ascension realm. Not long after, he entered the earthly Emperor's small world, and there's been no news of him. As for Prime Chien, although his current strength is only at the peak of the 6th level of the Heaven Ascension realm, he's still in his prime. Perhaps after seizing his body, Sanguinati will be able to reach even greater heights. Tianyang's eyes flashed. In the next moment, Sanguinati's soul suddenly rushed into Prime Chi-Yan's soul sea. As for Prime Chi-Yan's body, it began to tremble. This was the body's instinctive rejection of foreign souls. Seeing this, Tianyang's complexion turned solemn. Now they had entered the most dangerous moment. The body has begun to reject, but don't worry. First, devour Prime Chi-Yan's soul force. Tianyang said in a low voice. Hearing this, Sanguinati nodded. With a deep breath, the massive soul force left behind by Prime Chi-Yan was absorbed by Sanguinati like a whale. Prime Chi-Yan's soul had already achieved a half-primordial spirit transformation. Although this half-primordial spirit transformation was extremely unstable, it would automatically collapse as soon as Prime Chi-Yan's consciousness dissipated. However, the foundation of Prime Chi-Yan's soul was still incomparably solid. After just devouring a little, Sanguinati was shocked to discover something. His soul force had begun to advance by leaps and bounds. And at this time, Tianyang's true flames of annihilation also swept up. Sanguinati sucked in a breath of cold air. A terrifying pain directly flowed up, nearly destroying his consciousness. His entire body seemed to be scorched by a raging inferno. It wasn't just his skin, but his true skin, internal organs, and even the source of his soul sea. Everything was being burned by the true flames of annihilation. He was on the verge of death. Devour. Only by devouring can I restore my life. A thought appeared in Sanguinati's mind. Then it rapidly expanded. Sanguinati's powerful devouring power erupted once more, completely swallowing up Prime Chi-Yan's remaining soul force. This soul force carried a trace of Prime Chi-Yan's mark. When it passed through the true flames of annihilation, it was completely evaporated. Sanguinati also perfectly refined Prime Chi-Yan's soul force. Seeing this, Tianyang's face revealed a faint smile. He knew that Sanguinati had succeeded. Next, it's time to replace the mortal body, Tianyang said again. The great stone hanging in his heart had already been put down. After perfectly swallowing up all of Prime Chi-Yan's remaining soul force, this body would no longer reject Sanguinati. And at this time, Sanguinati also knew what he had to do. His consciousness slowly sank into the body. His soul sea took over the emptiness of this body's brain. Prime Chi-Yan's face also gradually distorted. The appearance was born from the heart. With the passage of time, Prime Chi-Yan's face also completely disappeared. What replaced it was the face of a handsome and elegant middle-aged man with a trace of evil intent. The next moment, Prime Chi-Yan, no, he should be called Sanguinati now, opened his eyes. A ball of light shot out. The true essence pressure of a peak 6th level Heaven Ascension realm spread out in all directions. The Emperor of a generation, Sanguinati, had been resurrected, and after being resurrected, the first thing Sanguinati did. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and caught the item that Sanguinati threw out without hesitation. He thought it was a space bag. However, this thing merged into Tianyang's body in the blink of an eye, causing Tianyang's spirit ocean to grow a little stronger. This is your spirit origin? Hearing this, Tianyang's expression changed. Sanguinati chuckled. Young master would definitely not accept it if I gave it to you directly, so I had no choice but to do this, Sanguinati said. Hearing this, Tianyang sighed helplessly. Spirit origin was Sanguinati's foundation. He did not expect Sanguinati to throw it to him in such a casual way. Moreover, When it fell into his hands, it merged into his body of its own accord. As a result, he could not react in time. Now, spirit origin had become a part of Tianyang's spirit ocean. Forcefully stripping it out would be harmful to Sanguinati. Forget it. Since it's a foregone conclusion, so be it. Now, I'm going to cultivate in seclusion for a while. You guys protect me. Tianyang turned around and walked into the ascending dragon palace, waving his hand. At the same time, a few pills flew out of the space bag and landed in the hands of Sanguinati and the Navagraha dragon tree, respectively. Yes, if an enemy invades, I'll make sure they don't return, Sanguinati said loudly. Then, holding the blood sword in his hand, he stood guard in front of the ascending dragon palace like a giant god. Speaking of which, what kind of pill is this? Grade 6 Spirit Meld Pill. Grade 6 Spirit Pill, Life Spirit Pill, Death Reincarnation Pill, and Spirit Life Pill. Sanguinati and the Navagraha dragon tree were shocked at the same time and quickly turned to look. However, Tianyang had already disappeared from their sight. This divine flame of 10,000 elephant is really powerful. It can devour many spiritual fires for its own use. Tianyang sat cross-legged in the center of the dried supreme pool, comprehending the divine flame of 10,000 elephant in his mind. Tianyang was able to merge the laying heavenly flame and annihilation spiritual fire precisely because of the divine wilderness heaven spirit arts instinctive divine flame of 10,000 elephant. Later, he devoured the myriad poison netherworld flame of the heavenly Een Mountain Sect Master because of this move. Now that he had another grade 6 spiritual fire, Tianyang naturally had to use the divine flame of 10,000 elephant to devour it. Right now, I'm stuck at a bottleneck. The stronger my physical body, the stronger the bottleneck. The bigger my spirit see, the bigger the bottleneck. My physical body and spirit see, one is the ancestral dragon body, and the other is the boundless spirit sea. This bottleneck is really terrifying. Tianyang sighed. If he didn't say it, no one would know that Tianyang was now. He was still at the peak of half-step ascension realm. To be precise, he was still at the spirit sea realm. A spiritual ocean realm warrior was considered a weak existence among heavenly completion realm warriors. However, what did Tianyang do? He killed the pirate king, slaughtered the 3 Shadow Mouse brothers, killed all the Buddhist elites, snatched the demon ancestor portrait, suppressed Shadow Emperor Tian, killed Ghostly, and annihilated Supreme Scarlet Flame. Even a genuine reaching heaven realm expert wouldn't be able to do any of these things. But Tianyang, a mere sea of soul realm expert, had done it. However, after devouring this heavenly flame, the true destruction flames will definitely evolve again. At that time, it will be easier to break through to the ascension realm. Tianyang smiled and closed his eyes. The divine wilderness heaven spirit art began to circulate. The divine flame of 10,000 elephant also began to erupt. The true destruction flames appeared. They split into the annihilation spiritual fire, laying heavenly flame and myriad poison netherworld flame. In Tianyang's hand, the scarlet flame sect's inheritance spiritual fire, the heavenly flame's origin flame, which he had just snatched, trembled in his hand. The scarlet flame sect's inheritance mark? To be able to become a holy land of martial arts, their foundation is indeed not weak. This inheritance mark has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. However, no matter how stable it is, can it be stronger than the divine flame of 10,000 elephant? Tianyang smiled and looked at the inheritance mark hidden in the depths of the heavenly flame's origin flame. This mark firmly bound the heavenly flame. Only those who cultivated the scarlet flame sect's special art of scarlet flame, heavenly flame, could inherit the inheritance mark and refine the heavenly flame. However, in the eyes of ordinary people, this inheritance mark was even more indestructible than a steel fortress. Tianyang only smiled faintly. He pointed a finger. The divine flame of 10,000 elephant was used. Boom! The scarlet flame sect's inheritance mark inside the heavenly flame instantly collapsed. Then Tianyang opened his mouth and sucked. Chapter 846. Heavenly Fire, a grade 6 spirit fire. Tianyang had just devoured it when he felt a terrifying burning sensation spread throughout his body. It was as if it was going to burn Tianyang's body to ashes. Even the ancestral dragon body could not easily resist the burning of this terrifying flame. A grade 6 spirit fire is indeed a grade 6 spirit fire. Even after being refined for so many years, it's still so violent. Tianyang sighed. At this moment, he no longer had a dragon core in his body. Dragon patterns were engraved all over his body. It was equivalent to his entire body being a dragon core. Generally speaking, only dragons who had cultivated to the peak of the Wuzun realm or even the Saint realm could achieve this. However, Tianyang did it as a human cultivator who was at the peak of the half-step Heaven Ascension realm. The 108 ancestral dragon patterns lit up slightly and condensed an incomparably terrifying power of the ancestral dragon, resisting the heavenly fire crazily. At the same time, Tianyang formed hand seals with both hands and executed the myriad divine flames ability. An extremely terrifying power of refinement instantly devoured the white flame. However, this action also aroused the heavenly fire's resistance. Boom! The heavenly fire's origin fire seed erupted with an incomparably terrifying and powerful flame as if it had gone berserk, burning Tianyang's body until it was charred black. At the same time, cracks suddenly appeared on Tianyang's skin. Blood burst out and instantly dyed the ground red. A grade 6 spirit fire, the heavenly fire, was terrifying. Seeing this, Tianyang's expression was still as indifferent as ever. His face darkened slightly. 7 stars secret technique, open 3 stars. Stars imprisonment. Tianyang growled. In the next moment, terrifying soul power formed a cage and imprisoned the heavenly fire within. The star's imprisonment had imprisoned the strongest of the ghost race before. Similarly, it could also imprison the heavenly fire. At the same time, Tianyang's mind stirred. The divine desolate heaven spirit art circulated, and incomparably dense true essence flowed wildly in his meridians. Every time he passed by the heavenly flame, he would unknowingly take away a bit of its energy. The heavenly flame's power grew weaker and weaker, while Tianyang's power grew stronger and stronger. After devouring so much spiritual fire, Tianyang would naturally be able to devour the heavenly flame. Unknowingly, 5 days had passed. Heavenly Flame was abnormally strong and stubborn. Even though Tianyang had destroyed the Scarlet Flame sect's inheritance imprint in the depths of the Heavenly Fire Seed, a kind of inertia still caused the Heavenly Fire Seed to repel people outside of the Scarlet Flame sect. However, any form of rejection was useless in front of Tianyang's absolute power. After 5 days of refinement, less than a tenth of the Heavenly Flame's energy remained. As for Tianyang, he had fused 90% of the Heavenly Flame's strength into his own true yuan, once again breaking through the barrier of the Heavenly Completion stage by a sliver. 5 days have already weakened the Heavenly Flame to the point where only its origin energy remains. With a thought, Tianyang's true yuan circulated around him, even more condensed and powerful than it had been 5 days ago. Previously, the heavenly flame had been like a wolf charging into a flock of sheep. Tianyang had only been careful to preserve his energy when clashing with the heavenly flame. Now, the roles of the hunter and the hunted had swapped. The heavenly flame had long since become a sheep charging into a flock of wolves. As for Tianyang, he was a bloodthirsty wolf. If I continue to weaken it, it will inevitably harm its origin. Therefore, now is the time. Tianyang's eyes flashed, and in the next moment, his soul power surged out. At the same time, the 108 ancestral dragon tattoos shone, and the ancestral dragon's power surged out. Layers of true yuan in the boundless spirit sea surged toward the heavenly flame like enormous waves. The heavenly flame burned fiercely, incinerating the waves of veritable essence energy that were charging over, making a last-ditch effort to resist. However, how could Tianyang, who had already weakened the heavenly flame to the extreme, be restrained by such a small resistance? The true yuan that had been burned and evaporated by the heavenly flame returned to its original state. In fact, it was even more condensed than before. In the next moment, Tianyang felt it. The heavenly flame's resistance had completely disappeared. The spirit flames had completely abandoned the Scarlet Flame sect and recognized him as its new master. Whoosh! His soul power took advantage of the situation and carved Tianyang's soul brand in the depths of the heavenly flame's origin. In the next moment, the 10,000 divine flames abilities erupted. The heavenly flame, the 10,000 poisoned netherworld flame, the sun-spreading heavenly flame, and the annihilation spirit flame. At the same time, they appeared in Tianyang's hands. Seeing this, Sanguinati, who was guarding the door, stared with wide eyes. What was going on? One person controlled 4 types of spirit flames? Tianyang didn't cultivate the Tao of fire. How could he be so powerful? However, at this moment, Tianyang unleashed the 10,000 divine flames abilities to the extreme. Then he slapped the 4 types of spirit flames in his hands. Boom! An earth-shattering sound was heard. A violent firestorm erupted with Tianyang as the center. Then, Tianyang's body was enveloped by a black and white flame. The black flame was the original true flames of destruction. The white flame was the heavenly flame. In the next second, the 2 colors fused together at a speed visible to the naked eye. Finally, Tianyang's firestorm completely turned into a part of the flames in Tianyang's hands. Tianyang's true flames of destruction also changed its appearance. The main body was still black. However, in the most basic area of the black flame, a trace of white flame could be faintly seen. Not bad. The current true flames of destruction's power has increased by at least 2 or 3 times. Tianyang opened his eyes and looked at the new generation of true flames of destruction in his hands with a satisfied smile. The heavenly flame was indeed a 6th-level spirit flame. In addition, it had been nurtured by the Red Flame sect for such a long time. The energy it contained was extremely vast. Now, it had all been refined by Tianyang and merged into the new generation of true flames of destruction. The Red Flame sect's countless years of accumulation had completely become a wedding dress for Tianyang at this moment. Not bad. The bottleneck has also loosened a lot. At this moment, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. At this moment, he was still at the peak of the half-step ascension realm. His physical body was too strong, and his boundless spirit sea was too vast. The terrifying ascension realm barrier was not so easily broken. But now, because of a secret skill of 7 stars, the ancestral dragon's body, and the new generation of true flames of destruction, this bottleneck was once again cracked. If he could break it, Tianyang conservatively estimated that it was possible for him to directly jump to LV3 of the Ascension Realm. But now, the most important thing is Tianyang took a step forward and arrived outside the Rising Dragon Palace. In the distance, a huge illusory image of the Dragon Emperor and the surrounding aura of the Dragon Emperor, as well as the sudden increase in power, told Tianyang. Chapter 847. The inheritance of the Dragon Emperor had appeared. Ever since Tianyang had stepped into the true Martial Dragon Palace, he could vaguely sense the time when the inheritance of the Dragon Emperor would appear through his powerful divine dragon bloodline. Now that his divine dragon body had become the ancestral dragon body, his bloodline power was even more powerful. He could sense the time when the inheritance of the Dragon Emperor would appear more accurately. Why did Tianyang dare to cultivate in seclusion to refine the heavenly fire when he knew that the inheritance of the Dragon Emperor would appear at any time? It was because he had a cheat code that was far superior to others. Even the people from the EC Dragon Palace might not have it. Young Master, are we going to fight for it? At this moment, the Blood Sword Emperor spoke while his eyes burned with blazing battle intent. He had just been resurrected. 5 days had only been enough for him to get used to the basic movements of this body. He was not very familiar with fighting. Using a skeletal body to perform a martial skill was completely different from using a physical body. What the Bloodsword Monarch needed right now was an earth-shaking battle. Of course. Tianyang smiled. In the next moment, he put away the Navagraha dragon tree and put Ling Yuhan, whose cultivation had reached half-step to heavenly completion realm, into the Emperor's spiritual herb garden. The upcoming battle was not something that Ling Yuhan could handle with her current strength. Although if Ling Yuhan were to unleash his strongest strength, including the 9 Serenities Saint body, the 9-tailed Moon Fox bloodline, and other trump cards, his strength might not be weak. However, under normal circumstances, Tianyang did not want Ling Yuhan to take the risk. He was her master, and Ling Yuhan was his disciple. How could he let his disciple go first when there was danger? As her master, he should be indomitable for his disciple. As for the Navagraha dragon tree, its huge body was not suitable for fighting, so Tianyang put it away. At that moment, the demon ancestor painting sighed. I didn't expect that the true martial dragon emperor would die in the heaven continent. I thought he would die on the way to conquer other worlds. However, young man, the true martial dragon emperor was not ordinary. He had many skills that did not belong to this world. If you have the chance to get the inheritance of the dragon emperor, you must get it. The demon ancestor painting reminded him. Tianyang's expression changed slightly. He nodded. All right. In the next moment, Tianyang and Sanguinati flew into the sky. They flew toward the center of the true martial dragon palace, which was sealed by a seal and gradually opened Palace Hall. True Martial Dragon Palace, Great Emperor Palace. This was the Dragon Palace's Dragon Emperor's Palace. The true Martial Dragon Emperor. At this moment, the experts who were searching for resources in other places all came to this place. I never thought that the Dragon Emperor's inheritance would appear in our era. Granny's spiritual mountain sighed as she looked at the grand formation and restrictions of the Great Emperor Palace. Dragon Emperor. God's God, God, Dragon Emperor, Emperor Palace, Emperor, Emperor. However, the Dragon Emperor tomb had opened countless times over the years. Countless Ascension Realm true martial warriors had entered, but none of them had succeeded in obtaining the inheritance of the Dragon Emperor. The appearance of the inheritance of the Dragon Emperor was unpredictable. Granny Spiritual Mountain and the other true martial warriors had not expected the inheritance of the Dragon Emperor to appear at this time. However, there are too many people here. At this moment, a calm voice was heard. Shirkaitian looked calm. Looking at the crowd that was gradually arriving, an imperceptible light flashed in his eyes. It doesn't matter. No matter how many weaklings there are, it will only increase the intensity of the fight for the inheritance of the Dragon Emperor. If you're not strong enough, you can forget about obtaining the inheritance of the Dragon Emperor, even if you're lucky. Granny Spiritual Mountain said calmly. As the strongest person in Sky Continent, for now, she was fully qualified to say that. In the distance, moving mountain Taoist looked calm. Hearing that, movie Emperor Tian, who had just arrived, suddenly became serious. However, after looking around, he did not see Cardinal Flame Taoist, so he could only shut up. He was only a Heaven Ascension Realm Stage 4 or Stage 5 cultivator. Compared to Granny Spiritual Mountain, he was too weak. However, why isn't Tianyang here yet? With his arrogant personality, no matter what, he should have joined in the fun. Movie Emperor Tian suddenly thought of a certain young man who had easily slapped him and Cardinal Flame Taoist in front of the true Martial Dragon Palace and killed Ghostly. At that time, their true essence was restricted and their strength seemed to be shackled. They could not even use 30% of their strength. That was why they were defeated and even killed by Tianyang, who had monstrous soul power. Now, in the true Martial Dragon Palace, they were not restricted by the Dragon Emperor Pagoda's restrictive spell formation. Movie Emperor Tian wanted to see what kind of expression the arrogant Tianyang would have when he met him without any restrictions. It seems like you really wanted to come? At this moment, a hearty laugh was heard. Two figures, one young and one middle-aged, stood in the void. Cardinal Flame Taoist? No, it's not Cardinal Flame Taoist. At this moment, Granny Spiritual Mountain's expression changed slightly. She looked at the person who looked similar to Cardinal Flame Taoist, but his face and soul power were completely different. This person's figure and life power were almost exactly the same as Cardinal Flame Taoist, but his face and soul power were completely different. What was going on? Possession would naturally gradually replace the original owner's life power. As for the body, there would also be some changes. However, Sanguinati had only been possessed for 5 days. His life power would inevitably be very similar to Cardinal Flame Taoist. However, the soul power was the foundation of a person. If the life power was similar but the soul power was different, it would be useless no matter how similar they were. Granny Spiritual Mountain naturally would not have guessed that the Cardinal Flame Taoist she knew was the middle-aged man beside Tianyang. You, Tianyang, you actually dare to come. At this moment, an angry roar was heard. Movie Emperor Tian's eyes were almost spitting fire as he glared at Tianyang. It was this person, in front of the true martial dragon palace. He had ruthlessly humiliated him. At the same time, he had also killed Ghostly, forced Cardinal Flame Taoist to retreat, and slapped him in the face. For Movie Emperor Tian, this was simply an irreconcilable hatred. I originally thought that in the face of such a huge opportunity, you would calmly find a place to hide and look for a small opportunity. I didn't expect that you would be blinded by opportunity and actually come to such a level of treasure. Movie Emperor Tian laughed loudly and looked at Tianyang with a face full of ridicule. Now, if you kneel down and kowtow to apologize, then I can spare your life. Hearing this, Tianyang's expression did not change. Instead, he glanced at Sanguinati indifferently. Sanguinati immediately understood and looked at Movie Emperor Tian. He pointed out a finger. Myriad Blood God Technique. Boom! A blood-red light traversed the void, pierced through space, and ruthlessly struck Movie Emperor Tian's chest. Movie Emperor Tian's chest instantly caved in and his mouth opened. A mouthful of blood spurted out. Chapter 848. One finger, piercing through space, defeating Movie Emperor Tian, and even severely injuring him. None of the people present had ever thought that something like this would happen. Everyone thought that Tianyang was able to sweep away all opponents and force Movie Emperor Tian to kneel and apologize because of the restrictive space. Once the restrictive space was gone, Tianyang would be like a tiger with its teeth pulled out, no longer a threat. As for the middle-aged man beside him, whose origin was unknown, everyone didn't take him seriously at all. Now it seemed, everyone clearly understood how laughable their previous thoughts were. Tianyang himself didn't make a move. Just a middle-aged man beside him, who looked like a follower, pointed a finger and directly killed Movie Emperor Tian. Everyone felt their faces burning. Although they didn't say it out loud, but they felt as if they had been slapped in the face by themselves. He didn't die. Did you hold back? Tianyang raised his eyebrows and said. Hearing this, Sanguinati shook his head. This guy has a life-saving trump card on him. Do you want to kill him? Sanguinati's expression was calm, as if he was talking about something ordinary that couldn't be more ordinary. However, when these words entered everyone's ears, they only felt a chill in their hearts. That was an expert of Heaven Ascension Stage 4 or 5. One of the true rulers of the continent, the strongest expert of the Shadow Clan. In the end, in Tianyang's words, he was so weak, so cheap, and could be killed casually. Not interested, Tianyang shook his head and let Movie Emperor Tian go. Since this guy was lucky and didn't die, it proved that this guy could still play a little longer. At this moment, a terrified shout abruptly sounded out from the mouth of a second-level Heaven Ascension Stage expert. Heaven Ascension Stage, 6th level, peak. That Heaven Ascension Stage 2 expert roared in shock. Hearing this, Granny Lingshan, Shi Kaitian, and the others' expressions changed greatly. Peak Heaven Ascension Stage 6? How could this be possible? In the entire Tian Shao Great World, No one could reach this level except for the ancient shrine's second elder or the East Sea Dragon Palace's old Dragon King. That was a terrifying expert second only to the Heaven Ascension Stage 7 Great Elder of the ancient shrine. That middle-aged man is actually really at the peak of Heaven Ascension Stage 6. What's going on? Granny Lingshan sensed a little and was shocked to discover there was a trace of vital essence, aura, left in the air. No matter how she looked at it, it was the peak Heaven Ascension Stage 6. Granny Lingshan refused to believe it. She even used the same spiritual wave detection technique that she had used on Tianyang. In the end, there was still no change. The Bloodsword Emperor was indeed an expert at the peak of the 6th level of the Heaven Ascension Stage. How is this possible? Since when did experts of this level become so cheap? Granny Lingshan was stunned on the spot. It was hard to imagine that such an expert would appear here. And he had always been unknown. How could they appear in the mausoleum of the Dragon King? And it seemed that they were Tianyang's guards? When did such an expert appear in the demon race? Look at this guy's aura. He's not from the demon clan. Sure, Kaitian's face was slightly gloomy. Looking at the two people slowly descending from the air, he felt a sense of crisis that he had never felt before. Although his cultivation had risen to Heaven Ascension Stage 6 because of the many opportunities in the Dragon Emperor's tomb. But compared to the peak Heaven Ascension Stage 6, it was still thousands of miles away. Granny Lingshan next to him was a little weaker than Sure Kaitian. It was even more impossible for her to be Sanguinati's opponent. At this moment, Sanguinati had completely broken the balance between the experts and the Dragon Emperor's tomb. On the side, the people from the East Sea Dragon Palace were also dumbfounded. Tianyang, when did he have such a terrifying follower? Long Taiji muttered to himself. Long Taiji had seen Sanguinati, but he had never seen Sanguinati without a skeleton form. Similarly, he had never seen Sanguinati, who is now at the peak of Heaven Ascension Stage 6. The Dragon Emperor's inheritance is about to appear, but it seems to need some primer. At this time, Granny Lingshan said, looking at Tianyang and Sanguinati, who were slowly walking over, she showed a hint of fear. Tianyang and Lin Sun were too strong. They were so strong that they broke the balance here. Originally, according to Granny Lingshan's thoughts, the Dragon Emperor's inheritance could only be decided between her, Sure Kaitian, and Qi Yin Supreme, or none of them could get it. But now, the arrival of Tianyang and Sanguinati, who were above them in strength, made Granny Lingshan feel a great sense of crisis. Primer. Hearing that, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and looked into the light pillar. In a light pillar, 9 giant dragons were spinning rapidly around a dragon pearl the size of a human head. 9 dragons orbiting Pearl. However, the light pillar had lasted for a long time and had yet to disperse. If it was touched rashly, even Tianyang suspected that it would be dangerous. That's right, but this primer is not something that our East Sea Dragon Palace can do. At this time, the Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace spoke. In order to break the light pillar formed by the Dragon Emperor's inheritance, you either have the dragon bloodline of the old Dragon King, or wait for it to disperse automatically. Now, no one here has the dragon bloodline of that level. The only feasible thing is to wait, said the Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace. The Supreme Elder of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace said. Hearing that, Granny Lingshan's face darkened. At this time, moving mountain Taoist, who had been silent all this time, suddenly moved. In an instant, he disappeared on the spot and soared into the sky. This guy wants to make a move? This light pillar is of the Dragon Emperor's level. At this time, Granny Lingshan's face changed as she looked at Moving Mountain Taoist who was standing in the void and whispered. Moving Mountain Taoist had a mysterious background and rarely made a move. Many people could only vaguely sense that Moving Mountain Taoist was very powerful. However, they did not know exactly how powerful he was. However, at this time, Moving Mountain Taoist's body suddenly trembled. The terrifying true origin pressure of a peak Heaven Ascension Stage Level 6 exploded. Taoist sex inheritance formation-breaking divine skill. Heavenly Tao, divine skill. The mountain-moving Taoist suddenly let out a loud roar. His quintessential essence revolved around his fingers. Both of his hands madly formed seals and blasted out a series of extremely terrifying seals. Seeing that, everyone's face changed drastically. This guy has the strength of a peak heaven ascension stage, level 6. At this time, the seals had already bombarded the light pillar. Boom, boom, boom. A series of deafening sounds were heard. Under the effect of the mysterious seals, the light pillar trembled rapidly. Seeing that, Tianyang's face changed. He used the Void Step secret skill and charged directly at Moving Mountain Taoist. Break! Moving Mountain Taoist roared. In the next moment, Chapter 849, the light pillar that represented the inheritance of the Dragon Emperor shattered. Apart from Heavenly Sun and Heavenly Sun, everyone else was dumbfounded. Their expressions changed drastically. That was the protection of the inheritance of the Dragon Emperor of true martial, an elite at the peak of the reaching heaven state. Just like that, it was shattered by an unknown mountain-moving Taoist? How could he do that? However, Tianyang's face darkened. I didn't expect that there would still be an inheritance of this lineage. It's my fault. Tianyang muttered to himself as he recalled the origin of the mountain-moving Taoist lineage. The mountain-moving Taoist lineage was indeed called the mountain-moving Taoist lineage. However, it hadn't been famous since ancient times, so Tianyang couldn't recall it. Now, after witnessing the mountain-moving Taoist's unfathomable means, Tianyang finally understood. The mountain-moving Taoist. The lineage of the ancient Taoist lineage. The ancient Taoist lineage was extremely prosperous. It was the most powerful force of the human race in ancient times. Before the Red Dragon Wuzun was born, the ancient Taoist lineage led the human race to resist the other races. The lineage of the Taoist lineage was very old. It wasn't exclusive to the Tianshao Great World. For example, the Buddhist lineage existed in most of the Grand Cycle world. It could be traced back to the Archean Age. The Taoist lineage was extremely powerful. Its mysterious means could almost shake the entire Tianshao Great World. However, after the Archean Age, the Taoist lineage gradually declined for unknown reasons. Until now, the Buddhist lineage was very powerful, and the Taoist lineage was nowhere to be seen. The mountain-moving Taoist lineage was one of the few lineages of the Taoist lineage that was still active in this world. The mountain-moving Taoist lineage searched for dragons, hit acupoints, and touched gold. It was a lineage that specialized in tomb raiding and searching for ancient cultivator caves. It was considered a part of the Taoist lineage. However, this lineage was usually very secretive. Tianyang hadn't seen it in his previous life, so he didn't have a deep impression of it. However, he didn't expect that after the collapse of civilization, the mountain-moving Taoist lineage, which was already weak to begin with, would still have a successor who was so powerful. However, even if you're a tomb raider, don't even think about snatching something from me. At this moment, Tianyang smiled and performed the void-treading secret skill. The tyrannical power of space even formed a space storm around Tianyang's body as it charged towards moving mountain Taoist. What? Seeing this, the mountain-moving Taoist, who had been confident of victory, had a slight change in his expression. He looked at the silver windstorm that was charging towards him and formed a seal with both hands. Heaven tier mid-grade martial skill, seal of mountains and rivers. The mountain-moving Taoist growled as his true yuan at the peak of the 6th tier of the Heaven Ascension stage gushed out, transforming into a majestic seal that ruthlessly shot towards Tianyang. However, Tianyang's expression did not change at all. A sharp light flashed in his hand, and the great void sword embryo appeared. Sky Extreme Sword Art, 3rd Sword, Star Burial. Boom! The seal of mountains and rivers collided violently with the Star Burial sword. For a moment, there was no clear winner. At this moment, Sanguinati arrived behind the mountain-moving Taoist. Heaven Slashing Sword Art, 5th Sword. Sanguinati growled as the blood sword released a dazzling red light. 5 sword arts slashed out towards the mountain-moving Taoist. There are actually 2 more. The mountain-moving Taoist could not care less about Tianyang. Compared to Tianyang, who had yet to reach the Heaven Ascension stage, Sanguinati, who was obviously at the peak of the 6th tier of the Heaven Ascension stage, posed a greater threat. With a growl, the mountain-moving Taoist punched out. Infinite Tao power. This punch was merely a condensation of true Yuan. There was no profoundness in it at all. However, under the collision of the 5 sword arts, it did not falter at all. In fact, it even broke the 5th sword that Sanguinati had been accumulating power for a long time. Even Sanguinati was shocked. What kind of legacy did the mountain-moving Taoist possess? How could he be so powerful? Even though he had yet to fully control the body of Supreme Qi Yin, the power of this sword was enough to defeat a powerhouse of the same level. Incomplete body and soul fusion. I see. At this moment, the mountain-moving Taoist's eyes flashed with understanding. He formed a seal with both hands, and in his mind his soul power surged. Heavenly soul, divine seal. The mountain-moving Taoist growled. Billowing soul power burst out from his mind. In the next moment, the seal that was completely condensed from the soul energy of a 7th-level Heaven Ascension stage martial artist shot fiercely towards the Blood Sword Emperor. Damn it! Seeing this, Sanguinati's face changed drastically. He had just taken over Supreme Qi Yan's body, and he was far from being able to fully fuse with it. What he feared the most was this kind of soul attack. If he was not careful, his soul might rush out of his body. 7 stars secret skill, open 3 stars. Stars imprisonment. At this moment, Tianyang's voice sounded. 3 stars appeared in front of Sanguinati, releasing billowing soul power. Chains extended out and wrapped around the mountain-moving Taoist's heavenly soul, divine seal. Seeing this, Sanguinati hurriedly activated the almighty blood god technique and left. In a flash, he appeared next to Tianyang. His face was still filled with fear. Luckily, Tianyang's star's imprisonment came in time. Otherwise, he would have been captured by the mountain-moving Taoist. He would not be able to return to his body for a few days. This soul power. When a mountain-moving Taoist sensed that his heavenly soul divine seal had been restrained without any resistance, a look of shock appeared on his face. His soul power was no weaker than Granny Lingshan's. However, in front of Tianyang's soul power, it was like a giant dragon facing an ant. There was no resistance at all. However, the battle between the mountain-moving Taoist and the heavenly sun Taoist was still undecided. The group of Heaven Ascension stage elites, who had been waiting under the light pillar, finally reacted and charged toward them. How dare you snatch the Dragon Emperor's inheritance in front of us? Granny Lingshan's face was dark. It was one thing for the mountain-moving Taoist to break the Dragon Emperor's light pillar and slap her face. However, Tianyang and Sanguinati were so fast that by the time she reacted, Tianyang and the mountain-moving Taoist had already exchanged hundreds of blows. It was as if she, Granny Lingshan, had really lost her vision. 9 Heavens God descending technique. Granny Lingshan let out a low growl, and an extremely terrifying soul power burst out. It turned into a giant god, holding a giant hammer and floating above Granny Lingshan's head. Sky-splitting axe. Sure, Kaitian of the Stone Tribe also had a rough stone axe in his hand. It released an extremely powerful aura. Rays of light shone from Sure Kaitian's body. The Stone Clan was a special life form nurtured by the heavens and earth. They were born with great strength. This stone axe was the Stone Tribe's heirloom. Legend had it that the Stone Tribe, the first of its kind, used this stone axe to split the heavens and earth. Although legends were legends, there was a basis for it. This sky-splitting axe was definitely not inferior to a supreme-grade spiritual weapon. Rising Dragon Fist. Dominating martial divine sword, great millstone of heaven and earth. Loud roars rang out. Rays of dazzling, true Yuan radiance shone between heaven and earth. Chapter 850. In an instant, countless experts attacked Tianyang and his companions. Tianyang and his companions, who were still in the middle of a fierce battle, were attacked by others at the same time. Even the East Sea Dragon Palace attacked Mountain Moving Taoist. The Dragon Emperor's inheritance must belong to the East Sea Dragon Palace. The Supreme Elder of the East Sea Dragon Palace had a cold look on his face. Dragon power gathered in his hand, and a shocking dragon-shaped spear shot out toward Mountain Moving Taoist. No matter what inheritance you have, you must die if you dare to snatch the Dragon Emperor's inheritance in front of the Dragon Clan. On the other side, Tianyang and his companion were facing more attacks than Mountain Moving Taoist. Although Mountain Moving Taoist was also at the peak of Heaven Ascension Stage 6, he was obviously at a disadvantage in the previous battle. In other words, Tianyang and his companion were more threatening than Mountain Moving Taoist. Naturally, the crowd would not allow such a threat to stand in front of them. Go to hell. Granny Ling Shan had a crazed look on her face. The giant god above her waved its giant hammer and smashed it toward Tianyang and his companion. At the same time, Shurikaitian Sky Splitting Axe also came. A bunch of ants dared to fight for the glory of the moon. At this moment, Tianyang smiled disdainfully. In his soul ocean, the Heaven Martial Soul, Sky Sword, appeared. Martial Soul Talent, Sky Devouring. Boom, boom, boom. A terrifying devouring power erupted from Tianyang. The surrounding dragon chi, spiritual chi, and even the true origin of countless experts turned into energy and poured into Tianyang's body. Previously, Tianyang could reach Heaven Ascension Stage 3 when he used the Sky Devouring secret skill. Now, Tianyang's cultivation was stronger than before. His physical strength had condensed the ancestral dragon body. The energy he could carry was also far greater than before. Heaven Ascension Stage 1. Heaven Ascension Stage 2. Heaven Ascension Stage 3. Heaven Ascension Stage 4. Heaven Ascension Stage 5. In a short moment, Tianyang's aura broke through 5 realms that ordinary cultivators would find difficult to break through even after cultivating for 1,000 years. The increase of 5 realms made the expressions of the experts who were attacking Tianyang change drastically. How is that possible? What secret skill is that? When did such a powerful secret skill appear in the Tianshao Great World? Everyone was shocked, but they quickly circulated their origin energy to increase the power of their attacks. Each of the experts revealed a ferocious look on their faces, especially Granny. So what if you have reached Heaven Ascension Stage 5? In front of the giant gods of my 9-heaven palace, you are nothing but an ant. Sky Hammer's hammer. Granny's roared. Azaz's soul, sky god of the heaven, heaven, sky. S's sky, S fierce, Seska, S's skies is heaven, S his S. Sky Splitting Axe. Countless fist marks, sword light, and saber chi arrived in front of Tianyang in an instant. Tianyang smiled faintly when he saw that. Heaven Ascension Stage 5's true essence was fully activated, and 108 ancestral dragon marks bloomed. Sky Extreme Sword Technique, Sky Extreme. The Great Void Sword Embryo, which was possessed by the Sky Sword, slashed out. At that moment, it emitted the light of a supreme-grade spirit artifact. Boom! A sword light cut through heaven and earth, annihilating the countless attacks. Wherever it passed, the heavens cracked and the universe shattered. Sky Hammer? Break. Sky Splitting Axe? Shatter. Rising Dragon Fist, dominating Martial Divine Sword. Heaven and Earth Millstone, Annihilation. Sanguinati didn't even have a chance to attack. Tianyang alone defeated all the attacks. How is this possible? Granny Lingshan's pupils constricted to the extreme as she stared at the sword light that seemed to be able to destroy everything. It was too strong. It was so strong that it was impossible for it to appear on this young man. Everyone present was a terrifying almighty who had cultivated for thousands of years and dominated the continent. However, in front of this sword, they felt as if they had returned to the time when they had just started cultivating. They could only look up to Tianyang. This young man is so strong. Even moving mountain Taoist had a look of shock on his face. A single sword strike had forced back countless experts. Although one-third of them had attacked moving mountain Taoist, most of them had attacked Sanguinati, but Tianyong had intercepted and killed them halfway. However, the most powerful ones, Granny Lingshan's Nine Heavens God descending technique and Shi Kaiyan Sky splitting axe, had gone straight for Tianyong. Even if Tianyong had paid a huge price, it was still a terrifying battle record that was enough to shock the world. If that's all you've got, I advise you to go home early. Tianyong held the Great Void sword embryo in his hand and smiled faintly as he forced the experts to retreat. Tianyong naturally didn't have such powerful strength. It was already not easy for the ancestral dragon body in reaching Heaven Realm LV5 to block the attacks of Shi Kaiyan and Granny Lingshan. Moreover, there were countless experts following closely behind. However, they had all overlooked one thing: Tianyong's soul power. Tianyong's soul power was definitely the strongest in Tianshao Great World. Tianyong had integrated his soul power into the Sky Sword since 10,000 years ago. With such a powerful soul force, it would be a piece of cake to disrupt the attacks of this group of experts. Of course, without such a powerful soul power, no matter how others tried to imitate it, they would only die. Damn it, he's so strong. Granny Lingshan retreated 10,000 feet and stared at Tianyong. Tianyong had only made her take him seriously before. She had never thought that Tianyong would become a major threat one day. Now, Granny Lingshan had to pay the price for her previous underestimation. Tianyong's strength is too strong. If he continues to grow, he might overturn the current situation of the Sky Continent. We can't let him live. We can't let him live. Granny Lingshan's eyes were filled with killing intent, even if the rumors were wrong and Tianyong wasn't that young. However, the life aura that Granny Lingshan sensed wouldn't be wrong. Even if Tianyong was more than 20 years old, he definitely wouldn't be more than 25 years old. 25 years old, and he was already able to compete with so many experts on this continent? What kind of monster was this? How could the experts who were used to domineering on the continent let a genius like Tianyong, who was very likely to threaten their ruling position, live? Let's join forces and get rid of Tianyong. In a short moment, everyone had reached a consensus. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent as they glared at Tianyong. Seeing this, Tianyong's expression changed slightly. However, there wasn't a trace of fear on his face. Previously, he wasn't strong enough, so he was naturally afraid of this group of people joining forces. But now, his soul had the 7-star secret technique. His physical body was the ancestral dragon's body, and even his weakest true origin was strengthened to Ascension Realm Level 5 by the Sky-Devouring secret technique. In addition, he had Sanguinati as his follower. Chapter 851. Tianyong, Sanguinati, and Mountain Mover Taoist were at the top. Granny Lingshan, Shi Kaiyan, and more than 30 Ascension Realm elites were at the bottom. Countless elites looked at the three of them with uncontrollable greed and murderous intent in their eyes. Monster Venerable, why don't we join forces? Mountain Mover Taoist glanced at Tianyong and said, I don't really desire the Dragon Emperor's inheritance. However, there's a Taoist inheritance in the Dragon Emperor's inheritance that I, Mountain Mover Taoist, lack. If you can get the Dragon Emperor's inheritance, I can exchange it with treasures of the same value. Mountain Mover Taoist said. Tianyong raised his eyebrows when he heard that. The three of them were fighting fiercely just now, and now Mountain Mover Taoist was suggesting an alliance? That change in attitude was too fast. However, Tianyong was not someone who would not let go of the past. After thinking for a while, he nodded readily. All right. Mountain Mover Taoist's usually expressionless face suddenly showed a hint of joy when he heard that. Then, he looked at the more than 30 elites below with murderous intent in his eyes. If that's the case, I'll make the first move. Tai Heaven Covering Hand. Mountain Mover Taoist roared, and in the next moment, his body suddenly disappeared. A humongous hand formed in midair and slammed down on the crowd. The hand covered the sky and the sun, making the surrounding sun and moon dim. Everyone felt that they were suddenly shrouded by a shadow, but they didn't expect that. They did not expect Mountain Mover Daoist's martial technique to be so powerful. Boom! Granny Lingshan and Shi Kaiyan's expressions changed drastically. They quickly performed the Nine Heavens God descending technique and the sky splitting axe. However, Tai Heaven Covering Hand was not weak at all. Powerful spatial ripples exploded in the center of the three's collision. The rolling pressure almost shattered the ground under everyone's feet. Damn it, this Taoist is so powerful. Granny Lingshan and Shi Kaiyan's expressions changed drastically as they stared at the humongous hand that was colliding with them. A single finger was enough to shatter the world. If it weren't for the fact that the mountain-moving Taoist cultivation base was only at the peak of level 6 of the Heaven Ascension realm, just this hand alone would have been enough to shatter the world. Then, he would be able to destroy them. Is this the method of Taoism? It is indeed powerful. It is much stronger than the Buddhist sect's five-finger mountain. Seeing this, Tianyang was shocked. Then, he looked at Sanguinati. Stay here and guard against the Dragon Emperor's inheritance. Don't let others take it away. I'll be back soon. Young master, what are you doing? Sanguinati was slightly taken aback. Wasn't this the best time to obtain the Dragon Emperor's inheritance? Damn, let's go on a killing spree. Tianyang smiled and executed his myriad Dao movement technique. With a meter-long sword in hand, he charged into the ranks of the mighty figures. Since the mountain-moving Taoist has already shown his sincerity, I can't be weak either. Tianyang smiled and formed a seal with one hand. A seal with blood-red light condensed in his left hand. In the next moment, he charged toward the group of powerful figures. Primordial superpower, primordial blood seal. The seal flew out of his hand. As it flew, it enlarged rapidly. In a short moment, it turned into an extremely terrifying attack. Humph! How dare a junior act so presumptuously in front of us? Seeing this, everyone's face darkened, with Shi Kaiyan and Granny Lingshan holding them back. The mountain-moving Taoist Tai Heaven Covering Hand did not affect them. They had planned to join forces to kill Tianyang. However, in the end, Tianyang charged down alone. Since you're courting death, don't blame us. Remember, the person who killed the demon venerable is called Yi Xiaolin. A Heaven Ascension Stage LV4 expert sneered, his figure instantly vanishing from the spot. He clenched his fists, and a Heaven Lower Class martial soul appeared. Primordial Dragon Bone Tiger. Yi Xiaolin actually used such a powerful martial soul. It seems like he values Tianyang a lot. Humph, he values him too much. Tianyang was able to make such a powerful slash before. He must be an arrow at the end of its flight. Now, he's just an arrogant trash. How dare he be so arrogant in front of us? The achievement of killing a demon venerable was actually snatched away by Yi Xiaolin. Some people looked indignant as they watched Yi Xiaolin charge toward the primordial blood seal. In their opinion, Tianyang's previous slash must have exhausted his energy. Now, Yi Xiaolin was just picking up the slash. Dragon Bone Body, Wild Tiger Spirit, Dominating Martial Divine Sword, Kill. At this moment, Yi Xiaolin roared. His LV4 Ascension Realm vital energy and the power of his Heaven Lower Class martial soul were attached to his body. The long sword in his hand burned with a ball of blazing light. In the next moment, the sword slashed out, dominating martial divine sword, dominating the world. Boom! A sword light collided violently with the primordial blood seal. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, the primordial blood seal shattered. The sword light of the dominating martial divine sword slashed the primordial blood seal, but it did not even cause a ripple. On the contrary, the dominating martial divine sword was like a drop of water thrown into the sea, instantly dissipating into nothingness. How is this possible? Yi Xiaolin's pupils shrank. He stared at the primordial blood seal in disbelief. Shouldn't Tianyang be an arrow at the end of its flight? How is it possible that he still had such powerful strength? The speed of the primordial blood seal's advance was not slow. This thought only flashed in Yi Xiaolin's mind for a second. His entire body was swallowed by the primordial blood seal. His entire body exploded into a bloody mist. However, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. The dominating martial divine sword and Yi Xiaolin's space bag had lost their owners and no longer had the power to resist. Tianyang casually waved his hand, and they fell into his hands. Upper-grade spiritual weapons? Not bad. Ascension Realm experts indeed have a certain level of foundation. Seeing this, Tianyang smiled faintly and threw them directly into the Great Void Sword embryo. A slight ripple appeared on the surface of the Great Void Sword embryo, and the dominating martial divine sword was easily swallowed. The power of the Great Void Sword embryo increased again. The heavenly sword did not remain idle. It directly swallowed Yi Xiaolin's inferior heaven-class martial soul, the ancient dragon bone tiger. It was a little closer to the superior heaven class. What? Yi Xiaolin is dead. Seeing this, everyone's expressions changed drastically. They stared at the bloody mist and roared in their hearts. In the next moment, 3 people suddenly rushed out from the crowd. Each of them had a furious look on their faces. How dare you kill Brother Yi? The 4 sect masters of the Firmament sect will not let you off. A young expert roared. In the next moment, his figure flashed and appeared in front of Tianyang. The long sword in his hand was burning with a ball of golden flame. You should consider yourself lucky to have died by my hands. Inferior heaven-class martial technique, flame wave sword. In the next moment, another person, holding a long spear, attacked Tianyang from behind. How dare you kill Brother Yi? I, Lin Hua, will definitely kill you. Demon-breaking spear. The last person, whose face was extremely cold, punched out above Tianyang's head. I, Mu Dong, will definitely kill you. Sovereign seal. The 3 of them were super experts of Heaven Pass Realm LV4. Seeing this, many experts revealed a trace of excitement in their hearts. The Firmament sect was a powerful force in the north of the continent. Although it did not belong to the central region, it had the power of a martial arts holy land. Now, the 4 sect masters of the Firmament sect had attacked. Tianyang would definitely die. The 4 sect masters of the Firmament sect? Hearing this, Tianyang smiled faintly. He swept the Great Void Sword embryo in his hand. I said, whoever comes will be killed. All of you will be killed too. Heaven-class sword art, trampling life. Boom. A ray of sword light swept out. The true origin of Heaven Pass Realm LV5 was released, along with the terrifying ancestral dragon power and the secret skill of 7 stars. Boom, boom, boom. Flame wave sword broken. Demon-breaking spear broken. Sovereign seal destroyed. Just as the remaining 3 sect masters of the Firmament sect were about to flee, their expressions changed. Tianyang smiled slightly. Another sword slash. Origin returning sword. Bang, bang, bang. The remaining 3 sect masters of the Firmament sect. They exploded into a bloody mist. Chapter 852. One strike. The 3 leaders of the Firmament sect, Xiao Chun, Lin Hua, and Mu Dong. 3 dead. Shocking the world. This guy actually has such terrifying power. Some people looked shocked and fearful as they took a few steps back. The 3 leaders of the Firmament sect had only been able to fight Tianyang in close combat because they had used their movement skills to pass through the primordial blood seal. In fact, the primordial blood seal was still moving toward them at a fast speed. Even if I can't beat him, I can still run away. I'm leaving. And at this time, there were finally some powerhouses who were afraid. They were at LV2 Heavenly Completion Realm. They were considered experts in the continent, but in the true Martial Dragon Palace, they were at the bottom. They had never expected to obtain the Dragon Emperor's inheritance. They had only come to try their luck. Now, even try their luck would cost them their lives. How could they dare to stay here? Leaving, Tianyang smiled faintly. He looked at the man who was running away and pointed at him. Did I allow you to leave? Using his finger as a sword, the finger radiance was like a sharp sword radiance that could split the world. The LV2 Heavenly Completion Realm expert did not even have time to activate his protective genuine vitality before his heart was pierced by the finger. His soul was destroyed, and he could not be more dead. I know very well who attacked me and who didn't. Tianyong stood in the air, his face indifferent. He looked down at the countless experts who were terrified to the extreme. They had been high and mighty, besieging him as if they could kill him with a wave of their hand. Now, they were prostrating themselves at his feet, afraid that he would kill them in a fit of anger. No matter how many catastrophes we've encountered in the past tens of thousands of years, strength is the foundation of this world. Tianyong sighed, then looked at the heavenly completion realm experts below. They could not escape or resist. All of them stood where they were, their faces trembling with fear. However, the immemorial blood seal was still advancing at a leisurely pace. If Tianyong didn't care, they would also be killed. Tianyong frowned slightly. It was not that he did not have the courage to kill them. No matter what the power behind this group of people was, Tianyong had always done as he pleased. Why had he ever cared so much? However, now that the Dragon King's mausoleum had been opened, it meant that the catastrophe of the demon clan that the demon emperor had mentioned was coming soon. Tianyong alone definitely wasn't enough to resist the demons. So many Heaven Ascension realm powerhouses were Heaven Cloud's continent strength. Do you want to live? At this moment, Heavenly Sun spoke. Hearing this, everyone's heart trembled. They looked at Tianyong in disbelief. Could it be that Tianyong would let them go? Yes. A man braced himself and stood up. He didn't care whether this was a trap set by the Tianyong or not. When a person was facing death, especially when it was right next to them and was constantly getting closer, they would always be endlessly courageous. In order to live, people would do anything. I remember that you attacked Moving Mountain Taoist. You can leave now. Tianyong raised an eyebrow and looked at the Heaven Ascension Realm LV3 powerhouse. Hearing this, the Heaven Ascension Realm LV3 powerhouse was stunned. Leave? Can I really leave? The Heaven Ascension Realm LV3 powerhouse said in disbelief. Hearing this, Tianyong snorted coldly. The great void sword embryo in his hand suddenly slashed out a sword light. The sword light slashed out. In the blink of an eye, it was an inch away from the powerhouse's forehead. He only needed to use a little more strength to kill him. If you don't want to leave, then die here. No. I want to leave. Lord Demon Venerable, don't kill me. Seeing this, the Heaven Ascension Realm LV3 powerhouse was scared witless. He immediately fell to his knees and begged for mercy. In the next moment, without looking back, he directly passed through space and escaped from the true Martial Dragon Palace. He did not care about what opportunities were left here. Seeing this person leave, the Heaven Ascension Realm LV3 powerhouse really left. The powerhouse's hearts were burning. Many of them had attacked the mountain-moving Taoist earlier. Didn't this mean that they could all leave? Those of you who did not attack me, hand over your space bags and you can leave. Tianyong said indifferently. Hearing this, the expressions of the powerhouses who had just shown joy froze. Hand over their space bags? This was simply asking for their lives. Having said that, it was only an example. As compared to one's life, an interspatial bag was just a worldly possession. Therefore, some of the powerhouses who did not attack Tianyong took out their space bags, erased the soul imprints in them, and gave them to Tianyong. Among them, there were also many who wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. However, after being identified by Tianyong, they were immediately killed on the spot. Their weapons became part of the great void sword embryo, and their martial soul power was devoured by the heavenly sword embryo. Seeing this, the crowd's hearts trembled even more. Soon, more than 30 powerhouses had left. The remaining powerhouses were those who had attacked Tianyong. The rest, break your arms and get lost. Tianyong said indifferently. Hearing this, the remaining powerhouses were filled with despair. Break their arms? Damn it, I don't believe it. He's just a kid who's still wet behind the ears in his 20s. How strong can he be? You and I are both at Heaven Ascension Stage LV5. I don't believe you can kill me here. At this moment, among the remaining 20 powerhouses, there was a sudden roar. A bare-chested powerhouse with a long halberd in his hand charged out. His face was filled with rage and killing intent. Die for me. I, the Overlord of the West Sea, will not die in the hands of a bullsh asterisk T demon venerable like you. The strong cultivator roared and unleashed a martial skill. The power of his martial soul exploded. It was also a heaven-rank martial soul. Deep-sea Overlord Halberd. Low-class heaven-rank martial skill. Raging waves devouring the sky. The powerhouse roared and attacked with his long halberd. A wave formed behind him and charged toward Tianyang. Seeing this, the crowd exclaimed, "It's the Overlord of the West Sea, Hai Tu Tian. I didn't expect him to attack so suddenly." Both he and Tianyang are at Heaven Ascension Stage LV5. Could he really kill Tianyang? Someone said hopefully. However, Tianyang's expression did not change at all. Those who resist stubbornly will have their souls refined. Tianyang said indifferently. 7 stars secret technique, 3 stars attack. Wrath of the Underworld. Tianyang roared. His soul power instantly turned into a wave more terrifying than Hai Tu Tian's raging waves devouring the sky. It charged toward Hai Tu Tian. In the next moment, Hai Tu Tian's expression changed drastically. He was about to attack with his deep-sea Overlord halberd when his soul was hit by Wrath of the Underworld. His soul exploded instantly. His entire body turned into a bloody mist. His martial soul power was devoured by the heavenly sword. His long halberd was also devoured by the great void sword embryo. The remaining powerhouses were all trembling in fear. Their faces were filled with hatred as they chopped off their own arms. This day, Tianyang, the demon venerable, had killed the 4 sect leaders of the Firmament sect and the Overlord of the West Sea, Hai Tu Tian. Countless Heaven Ascension Stage powerhouses had chopped off their own arms. It was a world-shaking sight. Chapter 853. How could he be so strong? Granny Spiritual Mountain's eyes were glazed as she stared at Tianyang, who was standing proudly in the sky and making countless powerful fighters break their own arms. Although Moving Mountain Taoist Priest was strong, he could not suppress Granny Spiritual Mountain and Sure Kaitian for long with just one Tai sky-covering hand. Granny Spiritual Mountain was confident that she could break through the Tai sky-covering hand within 3 minutes and subdue Moving Mountain Taoist Priest. Then, she could deal with Tianyang and obtain the Dragon Emperor's inheritance. After all, Granny Spiritual Mountain could tell that Moving Mountain Taoist Priest had to expend a lot of energy to use the Tai sky-covering hand. She and Sure Kaitian were both overlords. How could they be so easy to deal with? However, Granny Lingshan had never imagined that Tianyang would be able to sweep through the remaining 30 Ascension Realm powerhouses all by himself. It should be known that the individual strength of these 30 powerhouses might not be too strong. However, the strength that they could unleash when added together was even more powerful than her and Sure Kaitian's combined strength. In the end, they lost. Some died, some fled, and some surrendered. Even though Ascension Realm fighters had ways to restore their arms, they were not born innate. However, it was not innate after all. Similarly, the fear left in their hearts by the Heavenly Sun would accompany them until they died. Young Master is indeed powerful. The Bloodsword Emperor's heart shook when he saw this, and he spoke with pleasant surprise. Sanguinati had always known that Tianyang's strength surpassed his. However, that was when Sanguinati was in his skeleton form. Now that Sanguinati had successfully taken over and revived, his strength had increased greatly. Sanguinati also had some confidence. However, now he could still crush him. This is amazing. Seeing that Tianyang had gained a foothold, Moving Mountain Taoist Priest, who had transformed into the Tai sky-covering hand, returned to his original form. He looked at Tianyang in shock. Then, he disappeared and appeared beside Tianyang. Tai Soul Incantation, banishing Immortal Hand. At this moment, the mountain-moving Taoist suddenly exploded. Seeing this, Sanguinati's expression changed drastically. His eyes turned bloodshot as he dashed towards the mountain-moving Taoist. Mountain-moving Taoist, what are you doing? Seeing this, Granny Lingshan and Sure Kai Tian were stunned as well. Then they smiled proudly. The Dragon Emperor's inheritance was indeed precious. Tianyang and Sure Kai Tian had just finished their battle, and they were already fighting among themselves. Didn't that mean that they still had a chance to obtain the Dragon Emperor's inheritance? However, when Tianyang saw the banished immortal hand coming at him, he smiled faintly and did nothing. Boom! The banished immortal hand brushed past Tianyang's body and fiercely struck a figure. The figure was instantly sent flying by the sudden attack. He spat out a mouthful of blood and was exposed to the light. His figure was revealed. What? Sanguinati, Granny Lingshan, and Sure Kai Tian were stunned. This person was the third elder of the ancient shrine, who had been easily suppressed by Tianyang before the opening of the true martial dragon palace. However, there was another person in the hands of the third elder of the ancient shrine. It was Movie Emperor Tian for the Shadow Clan. He's using Movie Emperor Tian as a meat shield. Tianyang was stunned as well. The banished immortal hand that the mountain-moving Taoist had used had the power of a middle-grade heaven rank at least. He had thought that it would be easy to kill the third elder of the ancient shrine, whose aura had already weakened. He had not expected the third elder of the ancient shrine to be prepared and to use Movie Emperor Tian as a meat shield. Now, Movie Emperor Tian's entire torso had disappeared. His limbs had exploded into a bloody mist. If the third elder of the ancient shrine had not grabbed his head tightly, Tianyang would not have recognized him. If I had known, I would have asked Sanguinati to give him a quick death. Tianyang shook his head and sighed. To a Heavenly Ascension Realm elite, the leader of a clan, such a way to die was very depressing. However, Tianyang did not say anything. The great void sword embryo in his hand shone, and the genuine core of LV5 of the Heavenly Ascension Realm surged. He's actually not attacking the young master. At that moment, the Bloodsword Emperor finally reacted. He stopped awkwardly, not daring to look at the mountain-moving Taoist. His reaction had been the greatest earlier. Although the mountain-moving Taoist lineage is not well known, we still have a basic reputation. The mountain-moving Taoist seemed to have seen through Sanguinati's thoughts and said flatly. Sanguinati was even more embarrassed. He could only hold his bloody sword and look coldly at the third elder of the ancient shrine. I didn't expect you to show up in front of us if you're not dead. Sanguinati snorted coldly. The third elder of the ancient shrine smiled strangely and threw Movie Emperor Tian's head away. It exploded in midair, and the bloody mist was sucked into his mouth. The legacy of the Dragon Emperor is an unparalleled legacy. How can the ancient shrine not get it? If you know what's good for you, you'd better step aside. Otherwise, I'll show you how strong I am now. The third elder of the ancient shrine said ferociously. It was only then that Tianyang noticed the aura of the third elder of the ancient shrine, the peak of LV6 of the Heavenly Ascension Realm. Moreover, he seemed to have the possibility of stepping into LV7 of the Heavenly Ascension Realm. What's going on? How did this guy become so strong all of a sudden? The mountain-moving Taoist was also stunned. He was not surprised that Tianyang's strength had suddenly skyrocketed. He could feel that Tianyang had used a special secret skill. However, the mountain-moving Taoist could sense that the third elder of the ancient shrine had a real cultivation, even though it was a little unstable. Even if he practiced some kind of evil skill, it's impossible for him to reach this stage. The mountain-moving Taoist thought to himself. At this moment, Tianyang suddenly spoke. With your current strength, I have 2 people at the peak of LV6 of the Heavenly Ascension Realm. Tianyang sneered. He did not make a move immediately, but his eyes were shining. 2. The third elder of the ancient shrine was stunned. Then he laughed ferociously. So what if I have 2? As long as I step into LV7 of the Heavenly Ascension Realm, no matter how many people there are at the peak of LV6 of the Heavenly Ascension Realm, they're just ants. The third elder of the ancient shrine mocked. Granny Lingshan could not help but laugh coldly. LV7 of the Heavenly Ascension Realm? Do you really think that LV7 of the Heavenly Ascension Realm is a cabbage? It's already a miracle that there's a LV7 of the heavenly ascension realm in this world. You're not even as good as the second elder of the ancient shrine. Where did you get the confidence to say that you're going to reach LV7 of the heavenly ascension realm? Granny Lingshan laughed coldly. She had thought that someone had come to help them deal with Tianyang. She did not expect him to be a lunatic. Oh, the third elder of the ancient shrine suddenly laughed coldly. At this moment, Tianyang's expression changed, and he swung his sword. "Stop him!" Tianyang roared. However, the third elder of the ancient shrine had already penetrated the space and reached Granny Lingshan's side. Boom! He threw a punch, and Granny Lingshan's head exploded instantly. Then, Granny Lingshan was sucked into the third elder of the ancient shrine's mouth. The third elder of the ancient shrine's aura strengthened again. LV7 of the heavenly ascension realm. Seeing this, Tianyang's expression changed, and he revealed an extremely furious, murderous intent. His murderous intent soared to the sky. Everything around him was dyed blood red. I see. No wonder this guy could suddenly break through. Tianyang stared at the third elder of the ancient shrine, who had an evil, twisted smile on his face. The great void, sword embryo in his hand emitted a terrifying light. No wonder there's a fresh chi of death in a mass grave. So it's all you're doing. Tianyang looked at the third elder of the ancient shrine. At this moment, the third elder of the ancient shrine smiled and spoke again. Chapter 854. Long time no see, Demon Emperor Tianyang. Tianyang seemed to have calmed down, but the great void sword embryo, which had turned blood red, showed the terrifying killing intent in his eyes. The third elder of the ancient god temple's expression gradually turned demonic. The genuine vitality around him was gradually replaced by demon chi. Half of the world, which had been dyed red by Tianyang's killing intent, was instantly covered by darkness. The demon emperor of the demons. The most powerful demon in the Tianshao great world. The mass grave has existed for millions of years. If there was any death chi, it should have dissipated long ago. However, there was a death chi that had just appeared. I had my suspicions at that time. Then, the third elder of the ancient god temple appeared. He knew that I was powerful, but he still mocked me and said that I would be beaten up. It was very strange. Later, you appeared in front of us with a cultivation at the peak of LV6 of the heaven-reaching realm. That was when I completely understood. You are the Demon Emperor. Only the Demon Emperor's demon blood energy conversion technique can do this. Tianyang said coldly, looking at the third elder of the ancient god temple. Hearing that, the third elder of the ancient god temple smiled, and demon chi burst out instantly. The next moment, the shell of the third elder of the ancient god temple quietly collapsed. It fell to the ground and turned into layers of human skin. The face that Tianyang had seen 2 years ago also appeared in his sight. It was exactly the same as the Emperor of the Demons in the earthly Emperor Palace 2 years ago. I really didn't expect that you would discover me just because I did a little more and said a little more. You're really smart. The third elder of the ancient god temple, no, the Demon Emperor now, sneered. The death chi in a mass grave was indeed released by me to explore the way. I didn't expect that you could operate the Dragon Bone Battle Formation and block me in there for so long. You guessed right. The reason I attacked you earlier was to test your strength. The Demon Emperor smiled. Seeing this, Tianyang frowned. If I'm not wrong, Gu Wu Shuang, the 10 heavenly completion stage cultivators that were released earlier, as well as the experts that severed their own arms to escape, were all killed by you. Tianyang said. Hearing this, the Demon Emperor smiled. That's right. Hearing this, not only Sanguinati, but even a mountain-moving Taoist's expression changed. Even Shi Kaitian was trembling in fear. It was different from Tianyang's hostility towards the temple of the ancient god from the very beginning. He, Shi Kaitian, had allied with the third elder of the ancient god temple many times. So, from the very beginning, the third elder of the ancient god temple did not exist, but was the Demon Emperor. He had been fighting side by side with the Emperor of Demons. However, so what if you guessed correctly? This divine will clone of mine has already reached the 7th level of the Heaven Ascension stage through the Devil Blood Vitality conversion technique. Although the mountain-moving Taoist lineage and the human expert from 10,000 years ago are powerful, in front of the 7th level of the Heaven Ascension stage, they can still be crushed easily. The Demon Emperor laughed loudly, looking at Tianyang with a face full of killing intent. If it weren't for you, I would have already escaped from the damned seal of the earthly emperor and conquered the Tianshao great world. If it weren't for you, I would have already recovered my physical body. How would I have been seriously injured in the space transmission, and it took me more than a year to recover? If it weren't for you, I would have already broken the shackles of this world and become a demon venerable. The Demon Emperor's eyes shone with rays of light, and the next moment, he directly attacked Tianyang. Now, everything you made me lose, you will pay with your life. Oh no, young master, be careful. Seeing this, Sanguinati's expression changed greatly, and the blood sword in his hand bloomed with rays of bloodlight. Myriad Blood God Technique, Blood Centipede Sword. Sanguinati roared, and the Myriad Blood God Technique was activated, and rays of blood light bloomed. Boom! Terrifying rays of light bloomed from the blood sword in Sanguinati's hand, and ruthlessly attacked the Demon Emperor. The resistance of an ant. Seeing this, the Demon Emperor laughed disdainfully, and with a wave of his hand, a ray of demonic light rushed out. Demonic Primordial Light Bomb. Boom! Rays of demonic primordial light bombs were like a storm and ruthlessly attacked Sanguinati. Sanguinati's expression changed greatly, and just as he was about to defend himself, the Blood Centipede Sword did not buy any time at all, and the moment it was hit by hundreds of demonic primordial light bombs, it exploded with a loud bang. Sanguinati's chest was hit by the remaining demonic primordial light bombs, and his whole body flew backward, spitting out blood. The Demon Emperor's power was so terrifying. Oh no! Seeing the Demon Emperor coming straight for Tianyang, moving mountain Taoist, no matter how stupid he was, knew that he had to protect Tianyang no matter how stupid he was. Otherwise, how could Tianyang cause the Demon Emperor to have such a terrifying killing intent? Immeasurable Deity, Tai Soul Incantation, Banishing Immortal Hand, Moving Mountain Taoist roared, and the true Yuan of a LV6 Ascension realm shot out, and a fair-skinned arm, like a fairy descending to the mortal world, appeared. It ruthlessly attacked the Demon Emperor. Seeing this, the Demon Emperor's expression changed, and then a trace of contempt appeared on his face. So you're Taoist? No wonder I always felt that you were the biggest threat when we were both at LV6 Ascension Realm. However, compared to those real Taoist deities, you're still too far away. In the next moment, the Demon Emperor punched out. Boom! The Banishing Immortal Hand shattered with a loud bang. Moving Mountain Taoist's expression changed greatly, and he looked at the Banishing Immortal Hand in disbelief. This was a mid-grade heaven-class martial technique. How could it be shattered so easily? This guy is the Demon Emperor. Tianyang gritted his teeth, and then a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. LV7 Ascension Realm. Simply activating soul strength would not be able to do anything. Moreover, this LV7 Ascension Realm was the Demon Emperor. Now, the only solution was Shen Tian Wuzuan's strength open. Tianyang roared, and at the same time, his soul strength was unsealed. Without using the secret technique of 7 stars as a medium, Tianyang's soul strength of Wu Zun's soul strength erupted. It merged with Shun Tian Wuzuan's soul strength. At this moment, the Demon Emperor's expression changed greatly. You actually still have such strength? Damn it! The Demon Emperor roared, and an extremely ruthless killing intent flashed in his eyes. Tianyang was too monstrous, too terrifying. He could not be allowed to live. Demon Emperor's sky sealing seal. The Demon Emperor roared, and his hands formed a seal, and an extremely powerful pressure erupted. It was too terrifying. Tianyang's trump card. The current Tianyang had not yet reached the Ascension Realm, But he already had such powerful strength. What if he stepped into the Ascension realm, or even the peak of the Ascension realm? Then, wouldn't the demon race have no chance of occupying the Tianshao Great World? Demonic chi surged and turned into a series of mysterious black seals. This seal spanned across the heavens and the earth, displaying an extremely terrifying power. It was as if it wanted to seal the entire world. It's useless. At this moment, Tianyang's eyes flashed, and he spoke slowly. An extremely terrifying aura flashed by. Sacred Martial, 10,000 swords.